Chapter 129. The man in black's neck did not roll after being severed by Chu Mu's void-ripping metal edge. It remained in its original state. Only a smear of scarlet appeared at the neck. Blood slowly seeped out. Strangely, the blood was black in color, different from that of a normal person. "Thank you for your help, little brother." The man in silver smiled faintly. He looked a little weak. "Please protect me for a moment, little brother." As he spoke, the silver-clothed person unexpectedly closed his eyes at ease. He wasn't the slightest bit worried that Chu Mu would attack him. One had to know that this was a Qi transformation realm swordsman. No matter what, he would have some good things on him. At the very least, his sword was a rare treasure. Chu Mu only glanced at the man in silver and nodded slightly. He looked at the corpse of the man in black. With a step, he appeared beside the corpse like a gust of wind. His gaze fell on the narrow, pitch-black longsword in the man's hand. This narrow, pitch-black longsword released a frightening wave of evil and bloody darkness. It was as if it had invaded Chu Mu's mind. He hurriedly shifted his gaze, and it happened to fall on the wrist of the man in black's left hand. This wrist was about the width of a pinky finger. It was the color of black metal, and there were many fine carvings on it. It looked 30% gorgeous and 70% simple. Chu Mu's gaze fell on the wrist for a while, but he could not tell what it was. It looked like a very ordinary accessory, but Chu Mu had a strange feeling in his heart. He subconsciously turned to look at the man in silver, and his gaze fell on the man in silver's left wrist. There was a similar wrist, and it was also the color of black metal. Upon closer inspection, regardless of size, shape, or the carvings on it, they were almost exactly the same. It was as if they had been made from the same mold in the same workshop. These two Qi transformation swordsmen were obviously from opposing factions. Could it be that they had the same hobby and wore almost identical accessories? Chu Mu couldn't help but feel suspicious. He retracted his gaze and began to ponder. At this moment, the man in silver opened his eyes and glanced at Chu Mu. He didn't say anything and instead put down his sword. His right hand swiped across his left wrist, and a porcelain bottle appeared in his hand. He quickly opened the porcelain bottle and a rich medicinal fragrance quickly spread out. A milky white pill the size of a longan appeared in the silver-clothed man's hand. He opened his mouth and inhaled. The pill seemed to automatically enter his mouth. After stuffing the cork, his right hand swiped the wrist of his left hand and the porcelain bottle disappeared. The man in silver closed his eyes and shifted his body to sit cross-legged. He circulated the sword Qi art to refine the medicinal power of the pill. The entire process wasn't fast, and Chu Mu saw it clearly. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was slightly agape. His face was full of shock, and his heart was in turmoil. It was as if a storm was raging in his brain. Space wrist. Chu Mu's throat was a little dry as he spat out the words with difficulty. At the same time, a surge of joy surged through him. Even his resolute mind was momentarily lost. In the few months he had spent in the Azure Edge Sword sect, he had gone through most of the records in the library. He remembered that one of the records had described a mysterious treasure. This kind of protection was not large and could not increase one's attack or defense. However, it had a function that everyone coveted. It had a small space inside that could store all kinds of items. However, the records had only mentioned a little about a treasure like the space wrist. Chu Mu had never seen a space wrist on the elders of the Azure Edge Sword sect, the monastery master, or Luo Tianxiong. This was enough to show how precious the space wrist was. However, he had seen two of such precious treasures right in front of him. For a moment, Chu Mu's breathing became a little ragged. A look of struggle flashed across Chu Mu's eyes. Immediately, a sharp sword light shot out, shattering the struggle and hesitation. His gaze became even purer and more resolute. Turning around, he bent down and took the space wrist from the black-clothed man's left hand, studying it carefully. Although he already knew what kind of treasure it was, there were too few records in the records, and Chu Mu did not know how to use it. After studying it carefully for a while, he only discovered that there seemed to be a silver-gray crystal the size of a soybean embedded in it. However, he did not know how to use it. He could only turn around and look at the silver-clothed man, waiting for him to finish cultivating before asking for guidance. The silver-clothed man knew all of his actions and struggles. Only after Chu Mu had eliminated the struggle and hesitation in his heart did the silver-clothed man truly relax and focus on refining the pill. Otherwise, even with the special nature of what he had learned, which allowed him to calculate things that ordinary people would not know, he would not dare to let his guard down completely when he was heavily injured. The facts proved that all of his calculations were correct. After a while, the silver-clothed man opened his eyes. He had finished regulating his breathing, and his face was much rosier. He quickly stood up and sheathed his sword. Looking at Chu Mu, he smiled faintly. "Thank you, little brother. Otherwise, I don't know when I would have been able to kill this bastard. How do I use this space wrist?" Chu Mu nodded. He did not show any fear or restraint because of the difference in cultivation. Instead, he asked very calmly. He was very confident in his sword observation technique. He had never missed anything, and the silver-clothed man was clearly confident in what he had learned as well. Both of them behaved very calmly. "You only need to drip your blood into the space wrist. After absorbing it, you'll be able to establish a connection with it. Then, you can use it after you imprint your soul into it," explained the silver-clothed man. Chu Mu immediately cut his finger and squeezed out a drop of blood, dripping it onto the wrist. The blood was immediately absorbed by the patterns on the wrist and vanished. Subsequently, Chu Mu concentrated his mental intent, and it pierced through the void and landed on the wristband in his hand. In an instant, he entered it and felt as if his mind had entered another void. It was extremely strange. A sliver of a close connection appeared between the wristband in his hand and himself, as if it was an extension. The silver-clothed man was somewhat dumbstruck. Evidently, he didn't expect Chu Mu to recognize the spatial wristband as its master so quickly. He let out a slightly bitter laugh and said, "Under normal circumstances, only those whose cultivation reaches the Qi transformation realm can make the spatial wristband recognize them as its master. I didn't expect that little brother, you, who is only at the 10th phase of the sword aura realm, could do it." Chu Mu was slightly surprised when he heard that. Then, he looked at the silver-clothed man calmly, which made the silver-clothed man admire him. Normal swordsmen in the sword Qi realm would not be able to do that. He had such a mentality. The silver-clothed man paused and smiled. His tone seemed to be even gentler as he asked, "You really are extraordinary. What's your name, little brother?" "Chu Mu. My name is Zhuge Ming. Brother Chu deserves a lot of credit for killing the people from the Blood Sword Tower today." Zhuge Ming smiled and said, "However, Senior Brother Chu is not a disciple of the Sword Mansion, so he will not be rewarded. But I will not let Brother Chu Mu suffer." Sword Mansion? Chu Mu did not understand. He had only heard of the Sword Faction and the Li Province Sword Academy, but he had never heard of the Sword Mansion. The Sword Mansion is the Great Kuan Sword Mansion. It is the place where all the genius swordsmen of the Great Kuan dynasty gather. It is of an even higher level than the Sword Academy. I see that Brother Chu Mu is still young, but you have such a cultivation. When you have the chance to enter the Sword Mansion, you will be able to truly understand it. Zhuge Ming did not explain too much about the Sword Mansion. He changed the topic. "I need to bring this Blood Sword Tower member's sword and identity medallion back to the Sword Mansion as proof of completing the mission. Furthermore, this sword is not suitable for you, Brother Chu Mu. If you bring it with you, if you encounter a fish from the Blood Sword Tower that escapes the net, it will bring disaster to you. Brother Chu Mu, Please check your spatial bracelet and see if there is any identity medallion for this person. Chu-Mu nodded. His mind synchronized with the spatial bracelet in his hand, forming a close connection. In an instant, his mind poured into the silver-gray crystal. Everything within the spatial bracelet appeared in his mind. It was a static space about 1 cubic meter in size. There were some things placed in an orderly manner inside. Chu-Mu carefully scanned through them. There were spiritual stones, porcelain bottles, books, a palm-sized black medallion, and some black clothes. With a thought, the black medallion appeared in his hand, releasing a weak, evil fluctuation. Yes, this is the person's identity medallion. The silver-clothed man was delighted, but he did not try to snatch it. Chu-Mu's hand shook slightly, and he threw the medallion to the silver-clothed man. The silver-clothed man caught it, looked at it, and hurriedly put it into his spatial bracelet. Then, he grabbed at the air, and the narrow black sword on the ground fell into his hand. He put it into his spatial bracelet. This sword is a medium-grade sword. It is quite valuable. However, I do not have many spiritual stones, so I will give them all to Brother Chu. I hope that they will be of help to you after you reach the Qi transformation realm. As he spoke, Zhuge Ming took out dozens of spiritual stones and flew them to Chu-Mu one by one. Chu-Mu's eyes flashed with joy. He did not refuse and put the dozens of spiritual stones into his spatial bracelet. Dozens of low-grade spiritual stones naturally cannot compare to a medium-grade sword. However, I do not have anything else that I can take out. Zhuge Ming seemed embarrassed as he said, "In that case, Zhuge Ming, owe Brother Chu a favor. In the future, you can come to the Great Kuan Sword Mansion to find me. As long as it is something that I can do, I will not refuse." Chu-Mu nodded. In fact, he was already very satisfied with obtaining the spatial bracelet, everything inside it, and dozens of low-grade spiritual stones. No matter how good the sword was, he couldn't use it now. Even in the future, it might not be suitable for him. Moreover, as Zhuge Ming had said, if he brought it with him, even if it was in the space bracelet, it might bring him unnecessary trouble at any time. It was better to not have such a hot potato if he could. As for the favor that Zhuge Ming mentioned, Chu-Mu did not take it to heart. That was a distant matter. That's right. Brother Chu, the spatial bracelet is very precious. Even the leader of a low-grade sword sect may not have it. You have to be careful. Zhuge Ming added, if there is nothing else, Brother Chu can leave first. I still have to deal with this guy's corpse. Goodbye. Chu-Mu saluted with his sword, kept the spatial bracelet, and turned to leave. This person is indeed extraordinary. He looks to be only 17 or 18 years old, but his cultivation is close to the middle stage of stage 10. Most importantly, the purity of his sword qi surpasses that of many other sword qi realm swordsmen. He also grasps a high-level killing move. Although he only used one move, I can feel that his true strength is close to that of half-step qi transformation. The silver-clothed man looked at Chu-Mu's departing figure and thought to himself. There was a strange light in his eyes. If he has any ill intentions towards me, although I can kill him, I'm afraid that my injuries will worsen. Fortunately, my feeling is not wrong. Perhaps when we meet again in the future, it will be in the Great Kuan Sword Mansion. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 130. After leaving the silver-clothed man, before he even walked down White Maple Mountain, Chu-Mu stopped and carefully inspected the items in the spatial bracelet. There were a total of 156 of these spirit stones. Chu-Mu was sincerely happy. He had already experienced the powerful effects of spirit stones, so he knew the benefits of these things. Chu-Mu picked out 6 relatively different spirit stones from the 156 spirit stones and looked at them carefully. These 6 spirit stones were mainly gray, but the white spots were obviously much larger than the other low-grade spirit stones. Carefully feeling, he found that the spiritual qi in these 6 spirit stones was more vigorous and purer. Is it a middle-grade spirit stone? Chu Mu's mind flashed and a burst of ecstasy filled his heart. Middle-grade spirit stones, whether it was the purity or the density of spiritual qi, were above low-grade spirit stones. According to the records, the exchange rate between middle-grade spirit stones and low-grade spirit stones was 1 to 10. If it was really a middle-grade spirit stone, then he really made a big profit. Together with his own 3 low-grade spirit stones, a total of 159 spirit stones were put back into the space bracelet. After thinking for a while, he put one of the fake swords into the space wrist wheel. He also took out the clothes inside and threw them away. Then, he put his own clothes into the space wrist wheel. He also put all the things in his arms into the space wrist wheel. In this way, he did not have to carry a burden and suddenly felt more relaxed. In addition to the spirit stones, there were 4 books in the space bracelet. Chu Mu took them out and looked at them. They were a sword chi technique, 2 swordsmanship, and a sword skill. The sword chi technique was called Dark Blood Sword Chi Technique. It was a middle-grade black-level sword chi technique. It was much more advanced than the Shangyuan sword chi technique that Chu Mu practiced. The Xian rank was originally a large rank higher than the Huang rank. Chu Mu was extremely moved and he quickly flipped through it. As he read, his face involuntarily changed and a cold glint flickered in his eyes. There was even a sliver of killing intent circulating. The dark blood sword chi art was not suitable for sword chi realm swordsmen to cultivate, because it started with Xiantian sword chi. Only those who had reached the chi transformation realm could cultivate it. However, the most important thing was that the process of cultivating the dark blood sword chi technique was extremely cruel and bloody. It required the slaughter of living beings and the blood to assist the cultivation. Moreover, the best effect was still human blood. Once cultivated, the dark blood sword chi was not only fiercer than the Xiantian sword chi cultivated from ordinary mystic level sword chi arts, it was also very sinister and strange. Once hit, the blood flow in one's body would be affected, resulting in adverse changes that would affect one's health and so on. In serious cases, it could even cause one's blood to deteriorate and cause death. No wonder Zhuge Ming said that the black-clothed man had committed all sorts of evil deeds and his hands were stained with blood. Just by looking at the dark blood sword chi technique, I can tell that this person's usual behavior is indeed worthy of death. Chu Mu thought to himself. Although he had never bemoaned the state of the universe, nor had he ever acted on behalf of the heavens, he was extremely disgusted by the practice of killing innocent people in the pursuit of power. He had always believed that people who practiced the sword should follow their hearts and constantly strive for self-improvement. They should not pursue power through such cruel and bloody methods. An organization like the Bloodsword Tower really should be eradicated. Stopping himself from destroying the dark blood sword chi technique, Chu Mu stowed it back into his spatial bracelet. Although he would not cultivate it, he could keep it for research purposes. Perhaps in the future, he might come across a swordsman who cultivated the dark blood sword chi technique. As for the other 3 books, one was a high-level sword technique, one was a super-level sword technique, and one was a high-level sword skill. The high-level sword technique was called the dark blood sword technique, the super-level sword technique was called the blood slaughter sword technique, and the high-level sword skill was called the dark blood sword burst. Although Chu Mu was extremely moved, these 2 sword techniques and 1 sword technique all required the dark blood sword aura art as a foundation to be able to be cultivated. Otherwise, if he forcefully cultivated them, it would only cause his sword aura to become chaotic and his meridians to be damaged. What a pity, Chu Mu thought to himself after flipping through them. He tossed the 3 books into his spatial bracelet. Finally, there were 3 bottles in total. They were azure, white, and red. There were labels on the bottles. Meridian Recovery Pill, Chi Recovery Pill, Scarlet Blood Pill. Chu Mu frowned slightly as he thought hard. He had read most of the books in the library of the Azure Edge Sword sect, and there were records and descriptions of some pills. The pills used by sword chi cultivators were collectively known as pills. For example, chi gathering pill, chi training pill, chi breaking pill, and so on. They were all considered low-level pills. Once one reached the chi transformation realm, they were collectively known as pills. The grades were also different, with at least mid-level pills. For pills, as long as one was proficient in medicinal theory and had enough spiritual herbs, they could be made. But once it was a high-level pill, it would require an alchemist who had mastered the art of alchemy to be able to refine it. Thus, the value of a pill was far higher than a pill. As he pondered, the descriptions of the 3 pills appeared in Chu Mu's mind. According to their grades, these 3 pills are all mid-level. The main use of the Meridian Recovery Pill is to repair the damage to the meridians. The Qi Recovery Pill is to restore the Xiantian sword Qi in the Dantian. As for the Scarlet Blood Pill, it is used to replenish blood. It seems that the scarlet blood fruit is one of the main spiritual herbs used to refine the Scarlet Blood Pill. Chu Mu inspected the 3 bottles of pills one by one. There were still 6 Meridian Recovery Pills, 7 Qi Recovery Pills, and 4 Scarlet Blood Pills. He poured out a Meridian Recovery Pill and put the rest of the pills back into his spatial wristband. He then stuffed the spatial wristband into his clothes. Looking left and right, there was no one else besides him. There were also no traces of humans or fierce beasts in the surroundings. Just to be safe, Chu Mu found a more remote place and took the Meridian Recovery Pill. It was worthy of being a mid-level pill, one suitable for Qi Transformation Realm swordsmen. As soon as it entered his mouth, it transformed into surging medicinal energy that rushed into his body and into his meridians. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Mu's meridians were tougher than ordinary swordsmen's, and that the Meridian Recovery Pill's medicinal energy was gentler than ordinary mid-level pills, he probably wouldn't have been able to endure it. His injured meridians were riddled with wounds from being cut by swords. This was caused by the Xiantian sword Qi. At this moment, under the medicinal energy of the Meridian Recovery Pill, they were rapidly healing. Chu Mu looked inside himself and could clearly see that the shocking and scalp-numbing wounds on his meridians were rapidly healing. Waves of cool and refreshing feeling continuously passed through his meridians. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Everyone follow. The footprints show that this is the escape route of that damned little bastard. At the peak of White Maple Mountain, numerous figures flashed. One after another, swordsmen arrived at the peak. There were a total of 15 of them. The leader of the group was a late 10th phase swordsman. There were also 2 mid-10th phase swordsmen and 4 early 10th phase swordsmen. The remaining 8 were all at the peak of 9th phase. That damned little bastard. Not only did he kill 6 of our gang members, he also had 3 fake swords on him. No matter what, our team must first find him and bring him back to our gang to receive punishment. The late 10th phase swordsman in the lead shouted in a stern voice. His eyes were filled with killing intent. That's right. Once we capture him and bring him back to our gang, we will have made a great contribution and will be rewarded. A mid-10th phase swordsman to the side agreed. One of the peak 9th phase swordsmen squatted down and carefully looked at the ground. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, not letting go of even the slightest trace. Suddenly, this peak 9th phase swordsman stood up and quickly flew to the right. When the others saw this, they quickly followed. I see it. That little bastard is just ahead. A low cry filled with joy sounded out. The 15 King Snake Gang swordsmen all revealed joyful expressions. Their speed suddenly increased, and they turned into arrows that shot towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu had just finished his cultivation. A Meridian Recovery Pill had completely healed his meridians, and he could once again display all of his sword Qi cultivation. Not far away, a low cry and the sound of movement techniques breaking through the wind could be heard. This caused Chu Mu's ears to slightly tremble. He opened his eyes, and a sharp light pierced through the void and directly approached. whoosh, 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 whoosh. The 15 swordsmen of the King's Snake Gang quickly moved and formed an encirclement around Chu Mu. Each of them had a cold smile on their faces, and their cold and sharp gazes fell on Chu Mu's body, harboring malicious intentions. Little brat, obediently allow yourself to be captured. Otherwise, you'll suffer physical pain. The late 10th phase swordsman in the lead sneered. Each of them pulled out their swords, and sword light flashed as they pointed at Chu Mu. Waves of fierce killing intent locked onto Chu Mu. Just by relying on a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. Chu Mu indifferently smiled. His meridians had completely healed, and he no longer had any worries. The moment he finished speaking, his right hand grabbed the sword hilt as fast as lightning and pulled it out. The sword light was like a crescent moon. The moment he pulled out his sword, Chu Mu leapt into the air and used his killer move. 24 cold killing intents shot forward. You actually dare to attack. The expressions of the King's Snake Gang's swordsmen greatly changed. They were abnormally furious as they hurriedly dodged and pulled out their swords. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The air shattered as the 24 waves of cold killing intent were incomparably fierce. 2 of the swordsmen were unable to dodge in time and were immediately hit. Fortunately, they were able to use their sword chi in time, so they were not injured. As for the 10th phase swordsmen, they all activated their sword light. Activating sword light was the ability of a 10th phase swordsman. Early 10th phase swordsmen could activate half an inch of sword light, mid-10th phase swordsmen could activate 1 inch of sword light, late 10th phase swordsmen could activate 2 inches of sword light, and peak 10th phase swordsmen could activate 3 inches of sword light. Of course, there were some exceptions. For example, Xiao Qianfeng could activate half an inch of sword light when he was at the 9th phase. When he reached the early 10th phase, he could activate 1 inch of sword light. The power of sword light was extremely terrifying, far surpassing sword chi. The sword chi armor was simply unable to block it. However, compared to Chu Mu, the difference between these swordsmen and him was simply too great. Chu Mu used his wind walk movement technique. He was practically gliding along the swords as he swung the fake clear wind sword again and again, causing streams of blood to spray into the air. Kill him! The 10th phase late stage sword practitioner's heart was greatly shaken, and he was filled with shock. He quickly let out a fierce roar and used his killing move without mercy. This was because there were already 3 9th phase peak sword practitioners who had died under Chu Mu's sword. Their throats had been cut open. The other 10th phase swordsmen also used their killing move. However, Chu Mu's body was blown into the distance like the wind. Their killing moves all missed. Sword chi shot out in all directions, bombarding the surrounding trees and stones, breaking them into pieces and turning them into ruins. 30% of the wind concept had been combined, and the intermediate sword technique killing move, Clear Wind Kill, was used. A 1-meter-long light blue blade sliced through the air, tearing apart everything in its path. This caused the swordsmen of the King's Snake Gang to have a drastic change in expression. Their pupils dilated as they felt a light blue color fill their eyes. Poochie 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 sounds were endless. Under the terrifying Clear Wind Kill, 3 swordsmen were hit. Their sword chi armors were shattered on the spot, and their entire bodies were blown away. A huge wound opened up on their abdomens and chests, causing blood to spurt out. It was a ghastly sight. Chu Mu's foot tapped on a tree trunk. His 2 legs slightly shook, and he became an arrow that left the bowstring. With incomparably fast speed, he flew over. A sword swept through the air, once again bringing forth a few drops of blood. Landing on the ground, he turned around and spun. Sword light flashed as his body passed by the last 3 10th phase swordsmen. He shook off the blood on his sword and put it back into its scabbard. Those 3 10th phase swordsmen let out a strange sound. A trace of blood quickly spread out from their neck. Their eyes were wide open, filled with disbelief. Their entire bodies slowly fell forward. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 131. Our gang will not let you go. A swordsman at the peak of the 10th phase let out a final cry. His body fell backwards as blood flowed, and he died. On the ground beside him, there were over 20 corpses lying in a disorderly manner. They were all in different positions, but they all had one thing in common, and that was the thin wounds on their neck. Fresh blood continuously seeped out and dyed the ground red. Chumu always liked to kill people at the neck. Compared to other parts of the body, the neck was more likely to be fatal. With a sword strike and sword chi, death was inevitable. These 20 corpses were the fourth group of pursuers from the King Snake Gang that Chumu had killed. This made Chumu, who had always been very patient, feel very impatient. They were just a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs, but they kept chasing after him and died under his sword, one after another. After finding some elixirs and other things on their bodies, Chumu put them all into his spatial bracelet. He immediately used his movement technique and quickly went down White Maple Mountain without looking back. He was already tired of it, so he had to leave this place as soon as possible to avoid being found by the King Snake Gang. If that happened, it would be another massacre. Most importantly, if he encountered the Chi Transformation Realm swordsman of the King Snake Gang, he would most likely be in danger. The deaths of the 4 groups of pursuers caused a great loss to the King Snake Gang. Among the 4 groups of pursuers, there were nearly 30 swordsmen at the 10th phase and 60 or 70 swordsmen at the 9th phase. They were all the main force and middle members of the gang. It had been many years since the King Snake Gang had suffered such a loss. With these people dead, the overall strength of the King Snake Gang was clearly weakened. The various factions in White Maple City were ready to make a move. After all, no one was willing to submit to others. In the past, the King Snake Gang was strong, so they did not dare to have any ideas. Even if they did, they could only suppress them. However, now that the King Snake Gang had lost more than half of its middle and main forces, the leaders of the other factions in White Maple City secretly met and discussed. Chumu did not know that because of him, a variable had appeared in White Maple City. And now, the King Snake Gang, which had suffered heavy losses, was about to fall into a crisis and no longer had the strength to pursue him. Of course, Chumu was also deeply hated by the King Snake Gang. Once they had the chance, they would definitely find Chumu and torture him to death. However, they didn't know Chumu's name or his background. Basically, everyone in the King Snake Gang who had seen Chumu was already dead. Even if they wanted to find him, it would be like finding a needle in a haystack. With the spatial bracelet, it was much more convenient to travel continuously. Finally, after a month, Chumu entered the Li province. His cultivation had also broken through to the middle 10th stage. As soon as he entered the Li province, Chumu carefully recalled the topographic map he had seen in the sword sect. After asking 2 passers-by, he rushed in the direction of the Sword Academy. In the Li province there was the largest city, Dali City. However, the Li Province Sword Academy was not located in Dali City. Instead, it was located at the foot of a mountain range about 100 miles away from Dali City. This mountain range was called the Dali Mountain Range. It stretched for tens of thousands of miles and was the largest mountain range in the Li Province. The highest point of the Dali Mountain Range was more than 6,000 meters. From afar, the entire mountain range was like an ancient giant beast that was crawling and sleeping. It emitted a heavy pressure that made one's heart heavy. And the highest mountain peak was like a sharp sword that pierced the sky, piercing through the clouds. After confirming the correct location of the Li Province Sword Academy, Chumu's speed was very fast. He wanted to know if his eldest senior brother Li Yi and the others had already arrived at the Li Province Sword Academy. And if Xiao Qianfeng, who had fallen off the cliff, was still alive and had arrived at the Li Province Sword Academy. Like a gust of wind, Chumu did not stir up any dust. This showed that Chu Mu had amazing control over his own body. After a while, a vast and magnificent sword academy appeared before his eyes. As he got closer, Chu Mu discovered that outside the sword academy, about 3,000 meters away, there was a gurgling river. Tender green grass grew on both sides of the river. Not far away, there were some small pink and yellow wildflowers that looked like wild chrysanthemums blooming. When the wind blew, the tender green grass swayed slightly. As the small wildflowers swayed, a delicate fragrance blended into the wind and gradually drifted away. The river was about 5 meters long, and there was a small wooden bridge on both sides. From afar it looked rather poetic. Crossing the river in a flash, Chu Mu officially entered the territory of the Li Province Sword Academy. The road ahead was flat, and there was a small path paved with gravel that led directly to the gates of the Sword Academy. Along the gravel path, Chu Mu's speed was very fast, and the Sword Academy appeared more clearly in his eyes. The Sword Academy did not look small. It was estimated to be 2 to 3 times the size of Qinglan town. There were 5-meter-high gray-white walls, and there were dark blue glazed tiles on the walls that reflected dazzling light. Behind the walls, there were some trees and bamboos that were taller than the walls. There were also some vines that climbed over the walls. There were green leaves and small blue flowers blooming on the vines, forming a beautiful scene. But Chu Mu only glanced around, and his gaze was attracted by a stone tablet outside the Sword Academy. The stone tablet was about 3 meters tall and was silver-gray in color. There were 4 bright red words on it: Li Province Sword Academy. These 4 words were like silver hooks and iron strokes that revealed a sharp aura everywhere. It was so sharp that one could not look at it for too long. Otherwise, one would feel a stinging pain in one's eyes. After Chu Mu took a few glances, he had to shift his gaze to the 2 swordsmen at the gate. These 2 swordsmen stood one on the left and one on the right. Their backs were as straight as swords, and their auras were extremely condensed from head to toe. A sharp aura circled around them. Their eyebrows were cold and stern, and their faces were expressionless. When their eyes opened and closed, strands of light flickered, and they all fell on Chu Mu, who was flying over. Immediately, Chu Mu felt 2 sharp auras coming straight at him. They were like swords that made him slightly apprehensive. These 2 swordsmen wore white short swordsman robes. They didn't seem to be very old, around 20 or 30 years old. However, Chu Mu couldn't see through their cultivation. The feeling he got was that they were much stronger than Wei Hong, but they didn't seem to have reached the Qi transformation realm. Half-step Qi transformation. A voice sounded in Chu Mu's mind. He was inwardly surprised. This Li Province Sword Academy actually had 2 half-step Qi transformation swordsmen guarding the gate. It was truly shocking. Stop. This is the Li Province Sword Academy. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. One of the swordsmen stared at Chu Mu and said indifferently, "I'm here to study in the Sword Academy," Chu Mu said softly. "Show me your sword badge." The other swordsman's voice was just as indifferent. Chu Mu's left hand reached into his robes and his spiritual consciousness spread into the space bracelet. He took out the Qingfeng sword sex badge and placed it in his left hand. He then fished it out of his robes. The space bracelet was extremely valuable and precious. Even Luo Tianxiong did not have one. Thus, with his current cultivation, Chu Mu did not dare to openly wear the space bracelet on his hand. After handing over the badge and inspecting it, he looked at Chu Mu a few times before returning the badge. "You may enter." Chu Mu took the badge and strode into the Sword Academy. The first thing he saw was a cobblestone path that led straight ahead. On the left and right were green bamboo forests that emitted bursts of fragrance. Furthermore, Chu Mu keenly discovered that the spirit qi here was much denser than in the Qingfeng sword sect. As he walked forward, Chu Mu saw groups of 2s and 3s before long. They were all swordsmen around the age of 17 or 20. Their cultivation was at least at the early 10th stage. These people also saw Chu Mu, but they only glanced at him and did not pay much attention to him. This was because Chu Mu was only at the middle 10th stage. There were many people at this level in the Sword Academy, so they did not take him seriously. Chu Mu strode over and carefully sensed the aura fluctuations emitted by these swordsmen. As expected, they were all extraordinary. They were not something that the loose swordsman could compare to. I wonder where the Qingfeng Sword Sect's courtyard is located? Chu Mu looked around and remembered that Luo Yufeng had once said that different sword sects in the Lizhou Sword Academy had different courtyards. It seems that I should ask someone. Suddenly, a swordsman walked over and excitedly said to another swordsman, "Let's go. I heard there's a good show over there." "What show?" the other swordsman asked. He was the person Chu Mu wanted to ask. "A new disciple of the Qingfeng Sword Sect is being bullied. How pitiful. He only has one arm," he said as he walked. "A new disciple of the Qingfeng Sword Sect. One arm." A light flashed in his eyes. He looked at the two swordsmen and immediately followed. "Kneel down and apologize to me immediately. Otherwise, you can go to the sword battle arena." A cold and arrogant voice sounded. "You were the one who bumped into me first. You should be the one apologizing." This voice was clearly very stubborn. When it entered Chu Mu's ears, it made him feel even more familiar. His pupils slightly constricted, and through the surrounding crowd, he faintly saw a familiar figure among them. After squeezing into the crowd, he looked around. One of them had an arrogant expression. He stood straight and had a cold smile on his face. There was a cold light in his eyes. He looked down at the person in front of him, as if he was looking at a prey. Chu Mu felt that he looked familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen him before. The other person only had one arm. He held a sword and was kneeling on the ground with one knee. His head was slightly raised. He stared at the other person with a fierce gaze. He gritted his teeth and looked angry and unyielding. "What a joke. You were the one who didn't look where you were going. You just had to bump into me. I'm definitely injured. You have to kneel down and apologize. Also, you have to compensate me with 3 qi increasing pills. Otherwise, I won't let this go." The person touched his chest and shouted in a threatening tone. "Is that so? I'd like to see how you won't let this go." Chu Mu took a step forward and looked directly at the person. His tone was indifferent, but there was a trace of coldness in his eyes. "Brother Chu." Xie Chunlei was stunned at first. Then, he shouted with a face full of surprise. He wanted to stand up, but it was as if he had touched a wound. He took a deep breath and his cheeks twitched. But he still endured the pain and stood up. He looked at Chu Mu with a face full of excitement. "Senior Xie, you're fine, right?" Chu Mu turned around to look at Xie Chunlei and smiled as he softly spoke. "I'm fine. It's just that this bastard attacked me and accused me of bumping into him," Xie Chunlei said and stared at the person with a face full of anger. He seemed to have thought of something and added, "By the way, he is a disciple of Qinglan Sword Sect." "A disciple of Qinglan Sword Sect?" Chu Mu was slightly stunned. When he looked at the person again, he suddenly thought of Wei Hong. This person's eyebrows were similar to Wei Hong's. It seemed that there was a special relationship between him and Wei Hong. "I see. No wonder you are so arrogant. Do you think that you can make me back down and forgive you just because you are in the middle of the 10th level? Let me tell you, that is absolutely impossible. Even if your Azure Edge Sword Sect master came here, reason would stand on my side." This person's voice was stern as he roared. When he swept his gaze over Chu Mu, his eyes flashed with traces of disdain. "There is no need for the leader of our sect to come here. You want to fight in the arena, right? Sure, set a time and we will fight to the death in the arena." Chu Mu took a step forward. His aura was extremely sharp, and it was as if it was tearing the void. There was a terrible light in his eyes that forced the person to look at him directly. However, Chu Mu's words were as sharp as a sword, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. "You! The Qinglan disciple subconsciously shrank his neck. Chu Mu's sharp edge was too strong, and it made his heart involuntarily cold. He clearly heard Chu Mu's words. It was a fight to the death, not a fight to the death. The first thing he said was a fight to the death. This was simply the behavior of a madman. Either you fight to the death or you get lost. It is your choice. Chu Mu's voice was as sharp as a sword, and it made the other person's heart tremble. He unconsciously took a step back and suddenly pointed at Chu Mu with a red face. You. Just wait and see. After that, the Qinglan disciple turned and strode away. His heart was full of hatred for Chu Mu, and he swore that he would teach Chu Mu a lesson. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 132. This Qingfeng sword sect seems to have produced a great disciple. Oh, he's a very courageous person. Humph, what's so great about him? At best, he's just a lunatic who doesn't know anything. The moment he opens his mouth, he's going to fight to the death. Doesn't he know that in the Sword Academy, a sword chi of the 10th stage is nothing? After Chu Mu and Xiechunlei left, all kinds of discussions were heard. Some were full of praise and some were full of disdain. Brother Chu, where's Brother Xiao? Isn't he with you? Why didn't you arrive together? Xiechunlei's tone was a little excited as he asked several questions in a row. There were some accidents on the way, so I arrived first. Chu Mu smiled slightly and recalled the interception of the Qinglan sword sect's Qi transformation realm swordsman. A fierce, murderous intent flashed in his heart. It was a fierce, murderous intent towards the Qinglan sword sect. Oh, we arrived here 5 days ago. Now, they should be in the Qingfeng courtyard. Once Senior Chu arrives, they will definitely be very happy. Xiechunlei nodded and smiled happily. He did not notice the fierce, murderous intent that flashed in Chu Mu's eyes. How did you get into a conflict with the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect? Chu Mu changed the topic and asked. The disciples of the Qinglan sword sect. At this point, Xiechunlei gritted his teeth and looked angry. Since we came to the Sword Academy a few days ago, the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect appeared outside the Qingfeng courtyard from time to time. This time, I went out for a walk, intending to familiarize myself with the Sword Academy. Unexpectedly, the disciple of the Qinglan sword sect, Wei Gang, suddenly rushed up from behind and hit me hard in the ribs, causing me to fall down. Instead, he said that I bumped into him and wanted me to kneel down and apologize. He also wanted me to compensate for the chi-boosting pills. He was clearly trying to make trouble for me. If Senior Brother Chu hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid that this time, I would have really been in trouble. Yes. Chu Mu nodded slightly. He began to think. It seemed that only he and Xiao Qianfeng were attacked by the swordsman in the Qi transformation realm. Did this mean that the Qinglan sword sect felt that the two of them would be the real threat when they grew up? As for Li Yi and the others, it was highly likely that the Green Orchid sword sect did not take them seriously. However, as soon as Li Yi and the others arrived at the Lizhou Sword Academy, the disciples of the Qinglan sword sect took action. This situation made Chu Mu suspect that the Qinglan sword sect had already sent a message to the Sword Academy. Whether my guess is true or not, in short, the Qinglan sword sect and I are completely at odds with each other. In the future, when I am strong enough, I will kill the Qinglan sword sect and make them regret it. Chu Mu secretly said, as if it was an oath from the soul. Senior Brother Chu, we're here. Our Qingfeng Academy is in front. Xiechunlei's surprised voice woke Chu Mu up. Looking forward, there was a courtyard. The courtyard door was written with 3 big words, Qingfeng Academy. The door of the Qingfeng Academy suddenly opened and a figure walked out. Senior Brother Wang. Xiechunlei hurriedly shouted. The figure looked over and immediately, his eyes fell on Chu Mu's face. A touch of surprise spread from the depths of his eyes, overflowing his whole face. He whispered, "Junior brother Chu, you're finally here." "Senior brother Wang." Chu Mu smiled and saluted Wang Tingo with a sword. "Come in quickly. If senior brother Luo and the others see you, they will be very happy." Wang Tingo laughed and quickly opened the door completely to let Chu Mu and Xie Chunlei in. "Ha ha ha ha, senior brothers, come out quickly." As soon as they entered the Qingfeng Academy, Wang Tingo's voice spread like thunder. As for Chu Mu, he swept his eyes over and looked around. This Qingfeng courtyard was truly like another courtyard. There was a front courtyard, a large hall, and many other buildings. Soon after, Chu Mu's expression was slightly startled because he once again keenly felt that the spirit aura inside Qingfeng courtyard seemed to be even denser than outside of Qingfeng courtyard. "Junior brother, what are you so happy about?" A voice came from one of the buildings. "Come out quickly and see who's here." Wang Tingo shouted again. Could it be junior brother Chu? After a moment of silence, another voice sounded, with a hint of surprise. Immediately after, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. One after another, silhouettes rapidly flew out from the various buildings and finally landed in the front yard. "Junior brother Chu, it's really you. You're finally here. This is great." Li Yi and Yuan Wenhua's faces were filled with surprise and joy. They were sincerely happy. "Junior brother Chu, you're finally here." Luo Yufeng also had a face full of smiles. Zhou Jin stood at the side and laughed. In addition, there was another person that Chu Mu had never seen before. He had a cold expression on his face and stared at Chu Mu. There was a trace of curiosity in his eyes. "Junior brother Chu, your cultivation has reached the middle stage of 10th stage?" Immediately, Luo Yufeng's face flashed a trace of astonishment. He was very clear that Chu Mu's cultivation had only broken through to the early stage of 10th stage a few months ago, a little later than Li Yi and the others. But now Li Yi and the others were still in the early stage of 10th stage, a considerable distance away from the middle stage. However, Chu Mu had already broken through to the middle stage. This speed was a little too fast. "Yes, I just broke through." Chu Mu nodded. With the Qing Lan holy fruit increasing his cultivation talent to the 7th rank, coupled with the low-rank spirit stones and the yellow-rank top-quality upper origin sword chi technique, such a speed was nothing compared to the combination of all these factors. "I'm ashamed, as a senior brother, I'm now in the middle stage of 10th stage. Junior brother, you've only broken through to the early stage of 10th stage for 3 months. How could you break through to the middle stage?" Zhou Jin sighed, a little lonely, but it was immediately replaced by joy. His tone also became cheerful, "But this is also a blessing for our sect." The person with the cold face did not say a word. He kept staring at Chu Mu, as if he wanted to see through Chu Mu. "Junior brother, let me introduce you. This is 3rd senior brother Zheng Xiuran, a late-stage 10th stage sword chi cultivator." Li Yi pointed to the person with the cold face and introduced. "3rd senior brother." Chu Mu saluted with his sword. "Junior brother Chu." Zheng Xiuran also saluted with his sword. His expression was still cold, his tone was cold, and his eyes were cold, but a trace of curiosity flashed again. "Junior brother Chu, I heard that you defeated 2nd senior brother. I want to compete with you." Chu Mu was stunned. This 3rd senior brother seemed to be too direct, and the others showed a trace of a bitter smile. "3rd junior brother, if you want to challenge junior brother Chu, you need to choose a time. Junior brother Chu has just arrived." He shook his head slightly and smiled. "Junior brother Chu has just arrived and is not familiar with the Sword Academy. Let's explain to him first, then welcome him. After that, if you want to compete, then compete." "Okay." Zheng Xiuran nodded. The group of people walked into the hall and sat down. "Junior brother Chu, let me first tell you about the situation of our Qingfeng Academy, and then tell you about the Sword Academy." Luo Yufeng sat in the main seat and said with a smile, Currently, all the members of Qingfeng Academy are the 8 of us. Oh right, there is also junior brother Xiao Qianfeng. Including him, there are a total of 9 people. But didn't junior brother Xiao Qianfeng and junior brother Chu travel together? Why haven't they arrived yet? They all looked at Chu Mu, waiting for Chu Mu's answer. When we left Qinglan Mountain, we were intercepted by a Qi Transformation Realm swordsman and separated, Chu Mu said, but did not say the details. What? A Qi Transformation Realm swordsman intercepted and killed. Luo Yufeng and the others were shocked, and their expressions changed greatly. They were so shocked that they couldn't sit still and stood up, their qi surging chaotically. It's okay. It was probably just a Qi Transformation Realm swordsman, so the 2 of us split up and escaped. With Xiao Qianfeng's ability, he shouldn't have been able to catch up, Chu Mu said. He didn't want to tell the truth and increase the variables. I see. I hope junior brother Xiao is safe and sound. Luo Yufeng sat down again with a serious expression. He exhaled and then looked at Chu Mu. Junior brother Chu, you are also extraordinary to be able to escape from a Qi Transformation Realm swordsman. Senior brother, why are there only a few of us in Qingfeng Academy? Chu Mu smiled and changed the topic. Every sword sect is only allowed to study in Lizhou Sword Academy for 3 years. If you can't enter the top 100 within 3 years, you have to leave the academy and return to your own sword sect. Luo Yufeng was still deeply shocked, and his words seemed to be unintentional. In the past, the seniors of our Qingfeng sword sect studied in the academy for 3 years and didn't have the chance to enter the top 100, so they all returned to their sword sects and became deacons and so on. In addition, there are very few disciples in our sect who have broken through to the 10th stage, so now there are only a few of us. In addition, there are 2 stewards who are responsible for washing our clothes and cooking for us. I will introduce them to you later. However, if any of us are able to enter the top 100, our sect will be rewarded by the great Kuan royal family and obtain various medicinal pills, elixirs, etc. This will be of great help to our sect in nurturing new disciples. At that time, the number of disciples in Qingfeng Courtyard will slowly increase. Luo Yufeng explained, at present, among the 8 of us, I am the eldest senior brother, Zhou Jin is the 2nd senior brother, Xiu Ran is the 3rd senior brother, Li Yi is the 4th senior brother, Ming Hua is the 5th senior brother, and Ting Hao is the 6th senior brother. As for the 7th position, junior brother Xie has always believed that junior brother Chu is qualified to take it. I entered the academy the latest, so I will be 8th, Chu Mu said. Senior brother Chu, this? Xie Chunlei was anxious. Junior brother Xie, don't worry. Since junior brother Chu has said so, then you will be the 7th junior brother. This is just an order between us, and it is easier to address each other. It doesn't mean anything, Luo Yufeng said. Xie Chunlei sat down. The spirit qi in the Li Province Sword Academy is twice as dense as the outside world, and the spirit qi in our Qingfeng Academy is twice as dense as the Sword Academy. Luo Yufeng continued, cultivating in such an environment will naturally progress faster than in the outside world. In the entire Sword Academy, there are a total of 48 courtyards, which correspond to the 47 sword sects in Lizhou. Among them, there are 3 high-grade sword sects: the Raging Wave Sword Sect, the Profound Sword Sect, and the Plain Heart Sword Sect. There are also 8 middle-grade sword sects and 36 low-grade sword sections. It is said that the spirit qi in the courtyards of the 3 high-grade sword sects is 3 times as rich as in other places of the Sword Academy, while the spirit qi in the courtyards of the 8 middle-grade sword sects is twice as rich, and the spirit qi in the courtyards of the 36 low-grade sword sects is twice as rich. In addition, there is a courtyard that belongs to the prefecture magistrate, and it is on par with the 3 high-grade sword sections. The so-called prefecture magistrate was the highest official of a state appointed by the royal family. The prefecture magistrate's descendants were the prefecture magistrate's son or daughter, as well as some direct descendants of the younger generation. Currently, there are 4 great experts in the Sword Academy, known as the 4 Heroes of the Sword Academy. They are Chu He from the Raging Wave Sword Sect, Su Jianfeng from the Profound Sword Sect, Li Huayu from the Plain Heart Sword Sect, and the Prefecture Magistrate's son, Zhou Hongyu. They are around 20 years old, and all of them are at the beginning of the Qi transformation realm. Luo Yufeng said again. Everyone else had heard of it, except for Chu Mu, who had just arrived. This Raging Wave Sword Sect's Chu, he has the same surname as junior brother Chu. Chu He. Chu Mu's eyes flashed, but his heart was in turmoil. The son of the Chu family's patriarch was also called Chu He, and he was around 20 years old. He had also joined a high-grade sword sect, although he did not know what sect it was. But now, it seemed that this Raging Wave Sword Sect's Chu, he was the Chu family's Chu He. Next, Luo Yufeng introduced Chu Mu to the various related matters of the Sword Academy and other things that he needed to know. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 133. When Chu Mu arrived at the Qingfeng courtyard, Wei Gang, the disciple of the Qinglan sword sect, also returned to the Qingfeng courtyard. Like the Qingfeng courtyard, the Qinglan courtyard was one of the 36 lower-grade sword sects in the Lizhou province. However, it was quite a distance away from the Qingfeng courtyard. I'm so pissed off. This disciple of the Qingfeng sword sect is so arrogant. As soon as Wei Gang returned to the Qinglan courtyard, he directly rushed into the hall and sat down. He slammed his palm on the thick and hard iron wooden table and shouted with a face full of anger. Coincidentally, in the hall, there were 2 other people leisurely drinking tea. When they saw Wei Gang's angry look, they suddenly looked at each other and were a little surprised. They put down the teapot in their hands and looked at each other. Fourth brother, who in the Qingfeng sword sect is so blind to offend you? Why are you so angry? One of them stood up and asked with a smile. That's right, fourth senior brother. The Qingfeng sword sect is a weak sword sect. What kind of person could make you so angry? Although the other did not stand up, he also said with a smile. When he mentioned the Qingfeng sword sect, there was a flash of disdain in his tone. One had to know that the Qinglan sword sect had a record of one of their seniors making it into the top 100 of the Sword Academy. The entire sword sect was praised by the royal family, but the Qingfeng sword sect had never received such an honor. Listen, you guys. Don't you think it's infuriating? Wei Gang's anger calmed down a little and began to talk about it in detail. When he talked about the appearance of Chu Mu, his anger surged again and he slammed the table hard again. This abominable thing, he's only in the middle of the 10th level and he dares to be so arrogant. If I didn't want to be a busybody, I wouldn't be afraid of him. If he wants to fight to the death in the arena, then let's fight to the death in the arena. Who's afraid of who? The other 2 looked at each other. They had some understanding of Wei Gang. They knew that he was a person who only knew how to talk big. When it came to real battles, he was timid. He could get the title of 4th brother in Qinglan Academy only because of his big brother, Wei Hong. Wei Hong's cultivation was at the peak of 10th stage. His swordsmanship was not weak. Coupled with his belligerence, he was somewhat famous in the entire Sword Academy. In the entire Qinglan Academy, he was the current eldest brother. Wei Gang's cultivation was only at the middle stage of 10th stage. If he did not have Wei Hong as his backer, he would not be much of a threat. Fourth senior brother, what is the name of this disciple of the Azure Edge sword sect who dared to challenge you? One of them asked. How would I know his name? Wei Gang was still angry. In short, he is definitely not one of the people who entered the Sword Academy a few days ago. Listening to his conversation with the cripple, it seems that he has just arrived at the Sword Academy. As he spoke, the anger in Wei Gang's heart gradually calmed down. He carefully recalled and revealed a look of realization. Oh yes, at that time, the cripple called him Senior Brother Chu, but he did not say what his name was. Surnamed Chu. The two looked at each other as if they had thought of something. One of them smiled and saluted Wei Gang. Fourth Senior Brother, this surnamed Chu may really be a newcomer. He doesn't understand how deep the waters of the Sword Academy are. He thinks that with his cultivation, he can be domineering. This kind of person will definitely not be arrogant for long. Senior Brother, you don't need to ruin your mood because of this kind of person. That's right. This kind of person will definitely not be arrogant for long. Soon, he will understand that such strength is nothing. The other person echoed and saluted as well. Fourth Senior Brother, we are going to cultivate. We will take our leave first. Go, go. When Wei Gang heard them say this, he thought about it and felt much better. He waved his hand and said arrogantly. After the two left, they did not really go to cultivate. Instead, they quickly walked to a pavilion. There was a banging sound on the door. Who is it? A cold and harsh voice came from inside the room. Second Senior Brother, it's us, Yan Ming and Wang Kuei. Come in. The voice was much gentler. The two immediately opened the door and walked in. Why aren't you two cultivating? Why are you looking for me? Song Guangtao walked down from the second floor with his hands behind his back. His body was straight and he walked with a majestic gait. He asked with an indifferent expression. Second Senior Brother, it's like this. Yan Ming hurriedly explained what had happened to Wei Gang. I remember that Second Senior Brother mentioned before that in the contents of the message from the elders of our sect, there were two disciples of the Azure Edge Sword sect named Chu Mu and Xiao Qianfeng. I think this surnamed Chu guy who just appeared, could he be that Chu Mu? Chu Mu. Song Guangtao flicked his sleeves and sat down, looking thoughtful. Not long ago, Song Guangtao received a letter from the Qinlan Sword sect. It mentioned that most of the elite disciples of the Qinlan Sword sect were killed in the void realm of Qinlan. Even Wei Hong died in it. Such content shocked Song Guangtao. The message also mentioned the disciples of the Azure Edge Sword sect who had arrived at the Sword Academy. It also instructed them to do their best to create all kinds of trouble for the disciples of the Azure Edge Sword sect. Under the circumstances of not violating the rules of the Sword Academy, they should try their best to make the disciples of the Azure Edge Sword sect unable to stay in the Sword Academy. If they could legitimately kill them, it would be even better. Wei Gang is really a good-for-nothing. Song Guangtao frowned and said in a very dissatisfied tone, in the future, remove Wei Gang's title of Fourth Senior Brother. With his strength, he is not qualified to hold such a title at all. Yan Ming and Wang Kuei were both excited. One had to know that both of them had the sword chi cultivation of the late 10th stage. Although they had just been promoted, they were definitely stronger than that good-for-nothing Wei Gang. But Second Senior Brother, if eldest Senior Brother comes back, Wei Hong can't come back. In the future, I will be the eldest Senior Brother of the Azure Edge School. My words are the iron law. Song Guangtao snorted and said, in the future, Yan Ming, you will be the third Senior Brother, and Wang Kuei, you will be the fourth Senior Brother. Later, I will gather all the junior brothers in the Azure Edge School to gather in the hall and announce this matter. Thank you, eldest Senior Brother. Yan Ming and Wang Kuei were suddenly overjoyed. They quickly stood up and respectfully bowed to Song Guangtao. Congratulations to eldest Senior Brother for your great improvement in cultivation and for sweeping through the Sword Academy. Although the ranking of the Senior Brothers did not have any substantial benefits, it was better to be called a Senior Brother by others than to be called a Senior Brother by someone whose cultivation was not as good as his own. That's right. My cultivation has improved again. Even if Wei Hong comes back, he may not be my opponent. Song Guangtao's face flashed with a sneer and his eyes flashed. You two go to the Azure Edge School immediately to find out. If the newcomer is really Chu Mu, send him a letter of challenge. 3 days later, we will determine the winner in the sword battle arena of the Sword Academy. I will teach this Chu Mu a lesson. Eldest senior brother, there is no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Either one of us can teach this Chu Mu a lesson. The Lizho Sword Academy is not the Azure Edge Sword sect. Yan Ming immediately sneered and patted his chest. He looked like he was making a solemn vow. He is only at the middle of the 10th stage. He really thinks he is a big shot. When the time comes, I will teach him a lesson and let him know that the Sword Academy is very deep. He should obediently tuck his tail between his legs. No, I will do it myself. If he is really a genius, I will strangle him. Song Guangtao suddenly stood up. His eyes flashed with a shocking cold light and a trace of strange excitement. Yan Ming and Wang Kuei looked at each other and remembered that this eldest senior brother's hobby was to strangle so-called geniuses. When they were still in the Azure Edge Sword sect, he had done similar things many times. Even some of the so-called geniuses of the Azure Edge Sword sect and the Azure Water Sword sect had suffered. Yes, eldest senior brother. We will definitely do this properly. Wang Kuei said excitedly and turned to leave with Yan Ming. Wait, no matter if this Chu Mu accepts or refuses, you have to spread the news that in 3 days, Chu Mu will compete with me in the sword battle arena. Song Guangtao said with his hands behind his back and an aloof look. As expected of eldest senior brother. You are so considerate. In this way, if this Chu Mu goes to the sword battle arena, he will definitely be taught a lesson by eldest senior brother. From then on, he will tuck his tail between his legs. If he does not go to the sword battle arena, his reputation will be tarnished and he will not be able to stay in the Sword Academy. He will have to obediently scram. Yan Ming clapped his hands and flattered him before quickly leaving with Wang Kuei. The gate of the Azure Edge Academy opened and 2 figures walked out and strode away. It was Yuan Wenhua and Chu Mu. This was Yuan Wenhua taking Chu Mu to the Internal Affairs Hall of the Sword Academy to register. After registration, he could also receive corresponding benefits, such as a fake sword and a chi-increasing pill. When Chu Mu learned of such benefits from Luo Yufeng, he was quite surprised. The value of a fake sword was not low. Thinking about it, the 3 major sword sects like the Azure Edge Sword sect valued any fake sword very much. Even the swords used by many swordsmen in the Qi transformation realm were only fake sword. Thinking about the biggest force in White Maple City, the King Snake Gang, which was a powerful force that even the Chu clan could not compare to. They also mobilized a lot of people for a fake sword, resulting in many people dying under Chu Mu's sword. He did not expect to be able to receive a fake sword as soon as he entered the Sword Academy. Such benefits showed the generosity of the Sword Academy. Although Chu Mu already had 3 fake swords, he would not refuse to have one more. The value of this thing was not low. Even if he did not need it, he could give it to the Chu clan when he returned in the future. It could be considered as contributing to the prosperity of the Chu clan. As for the chi-increasing pill, it was a low-grade pill suitable for a 10th phase swordsman. The Azure Edge Sword sect did not have it, and even the Qinglan Sword sect probably did not have it. However, the value of the chi-increasing pill should be very high. Therefore, only swordsmen who had just entered the Sword Academy were able to receive one. After that, they could receive another one every year until the 3rd year was up. Of course, if one could enter the top 100 every year in advance, it would be completely different. The chi-increasing pill was a pill used to increase the cultivation of sword chi. Although Chu Mu now had a lot of spirit stones and could absorb the pure spirit chi in them to cultivate, the speed of cultivation was obviously much faster than under normal circumstances. However, with the chi-increasing pill, it could also shorten the cultivation time by a lot. The Internal Affairs Hall was under the control of an elder of the Sword Academy. This elder was serious and did things impartially. After Chu Mu handed in the Sword Academy's sword badge for verification, He took out 3 things and handed them to Chu Mu. The first was a fake sword with traces of light blue on it. It was a fake sword that leaned towards the water element. In addition, there was a small porcelain bottle with a chi-increasing pill in it. Finally, there was a sword token the size of a palm, which recorded the owner's identity and origin and so on. Junior brother, I heard that the chi-increasing pill's effect is not bad, but I haven't taken it yet. I plan to cultivate until I'm close to the middle stage, then take the pill and break through to the middle stage in one fell swoop. Yuan Wenhua smiled as he walked back to the Azure Edge courtyard with Chu Mu. Chu Mu nodded. He was also thinking that he would not take the chi-increasing pill for the time being. He would first absorb the pure spirit chi in the low-grade spirit stones to cultivate. As soon as his sword chi reached the middle stage, he would take the pill and break through in one fell swoop. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 134. Stop. When Chu Mu and Yuan Minghua were about to enter the gate of Qinfeng Courtyard, a cold shout came from behind. They looked back and saw 2 swordsmen striding toward them aggressively. You 2 are disciples of Qinfeng Courtyard, right? Yan Ming asked with a sneer. It's none of your business. Yuan Minghua raised his eyebrows and replied coldly. Of course it's our business. Is there a disciple named Chu Mu in your Qinfeng Courtyard? Wang Kuei took a step forward with a ferocious look on his face. His tone was cold. Among the disciples of Qinfeng Courtyard, he knew that the most powerful one was Luo Yufeng, who was at the peak of 10th phase. However, he was much weaker than Song Guangtao. In addition, the second most powerful one was Jing Xiuran, who was at the late 10th stage. His overall strength was much inferior to the disciples of Qinglan Courtyard, so he did not put him in his eyes. So what if there is? Yuan Minghua glanced at Chu Mu and raised his eyebrows again. His eyes flashed with a touch of impatience. When he was about to speak, he heard Chu Mu said indifferently, Of course it's good. Listen, I, the eldest brother of Qinglan Courtyard, have issued a letter of challenge to Chu Mu of Qinfeng Courtyard. 3 days later, at this time, the sword fighting arena of the Sword Academy will determine the winner. If you don't dare to come, then get out of the Sword Academy, so as not to make a fool of yourself here. Yan Ming also took a step forward and stood side by side with Wang Kuei. His breath was fierce and his words were like a sharp sword. We have brought the message. As for whether you want to pass it on to Chu Mu, that's your business. Whether Chu Mu comes or not is his own business. But all of you need to know that if you don't come when the time comes, then there's no need to stay in the academy. Scram out of the academy with your tails between your legs and never set foot here again. Wang Kuei said sternly again. His tone was full of threats. Then, without giving Chu Mu and Yuan Wenhua any chance to refute, he quickly turned around with Yan Ming and used his movement technique to leave. Yuan Wenhua was stunned for a moment and then said angrily, Junior brother, these 2 guys are too annoying. Alright, let's go in first. Compared to Yuan Wenhua's anger, Chu Mu's face was calm. He thought for a moment and saw through the others' plan. They were worried that he wouldn't dare to go to the battle arena, so they created all kinds of pressure to force him to go. A cold smile flashed across Chu Mu's eyes. I was just thinking about how to deal with you. I didn't expect that you would take the initiative to come to me. Very well, in 3 days you will know how stupid you are. The 2 strode into Qinfeng Academy. Yuan Wenhua immediately gathered all the brothers in the hall and repeated what the 2 disciples of Qinglan Academy had just said. The senior brother of Qinglan Academy. After listening quietly, Luo Yufeng frowned slightly. The senior brother of Qinglan Academy is Wei Hong. However, this Wei Hong has left the academy before and returned to Qinglan Sword Sect. He even disguised himself as a 9th stage disciple and entered Qinglan Virtual Realm, but he did not come out. It seems that the so-called senior brother now should be Song Guangtao, who was originally ranked second. Chu Mu and others were slightly stunned when they heard this. They did not expect that Wei Hong, who died under Chu Mu's sword, was actually the senior brother of Qinglan Academy. Senior brother, how is the strength of this Song Guangtao? Li Yi asked after pondering. Song Guangtao's strength is not as good as Wei Hong's, so he is ranked second. However, this person is quite scheming and his talent is not bad. Since he is now respected as the senior brother of Qinglan Academy, his overall strength must have improved. He should not be weaker than Wei Hong. Luo Yufeng said slowly, his face a little dignified. Song Guangtao's overall strength is better than mine, and he likes to attack and even kill geniuses. In the past, when I was still in Qinglan Mountain, some of the more talented disciples of our sect and Qingshui Sword sect were provoked and suppressed by him. I didn't expect that this time, he planned to attack junior brother Chu. This damned Song Guangtao. Zhou Jin's face was angry. If it weren't for my lack of cultivation, I would go to the arena with him and see how arrogant he can be. Zheng Xiuran's face was indifferent, sitting in the chair without saying a word. However, if one looked carefully at his eyes, one would find that there was a cold flash in his eyes, containing a trace of anger. Compared with the three of them, Li Yi, Yuan Wenhua, Wang Tingo, and Xie Chunlei were much calmer. After all, they saw with their own eyes that Wei Hong was killed by Chu Mu. At that time, Chu Mu's cultivation was at the peak of 9th stage. Now, Chu Mu's cultivation had been promoted to the middle of 10th stage, and his swordsmanship seemed to have improved a lot. Song Guangtao was not as good as Wei Hong before. Now, even if he improved, at most, he would be at the level of Wei Hong. At most, they believed that he was definitely not Chu Mu's opponent. They had 100% confidence in Chu Mu. Junior brother Chu, your talent is far above mine. Even eldest senior brother admires you. Therefore, you have a lot of room for growth. Zhou Jin looked at Chu Mu and said seriously, this Song Guangtao proposed a sword battle. He must have bad intentions. I know his goal very well. He must want to take advantage of the time when junior brother Chu hasn't matured yet to ruthlessly suppress junior brother Chu. Junior brother Chu will have a shadow in his heart, and will be unable to achieve greater achievements. This kind of thinking is very vicious. Yes, second junior brother is right. With my understanding of Song Guangtao, he is completely capable of doing such a thing. Moreover, once you enter the sword battle arena, external forces will not be able to interfere. Victory and defeat can only be determined on the stage. Song Guangtao will definitely think of a way to trap you, junior brother Chu, so you won't be able to admit defeat, Luo Yufeng muttered with a solemn expression. That, junior brother Chu. Should we tell eldest senior brother and the others? Wang Tingo looked at Chu Mu and asked hesitantly. What is it? Luo Yufeng and the other two were stunned. They looked curiously at Wang Tingo and then at Chu Mu. Their intuition told them that there was something important that they didn't know. Chu Mu didn't say anything. He faintly nodded his head. This sort of thing would be known sooner or later. Knowing now and knowing later, although there was a slight difference, they were all very close and united fellow disciples. It didn't matter. Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, third senior brother, the truth is that Wei Hong died in the Green Orchid virtual realm. With Chu Mu's permission, Wang Tingo began to speak. Luo Yufeng and the other two nodded. They already knew the truth. Could there be more behind the scenes? Thinking of this, their eyes couldn't help but light up. Wang Tingo continued, actually, Wei Hong died under the sword of junior brother Chu. What? Luo Yufeng and the other two stood up abruptly. Their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. That's right. The four of us saw it. Junior brother Chu and Wei Hong had a life and death battle. In the end, junior brother Chu killed Wei Hong with his sword. At that time, junior brother Chu was only at the peak of stage 9. After killing Wei Hong, he didn't suffer any injuries. Wang Tingo said in an incomparably confident tone, full of pride. Li Yi and the others also nodded vigorously. Luo Yufeng and the other two were petrified. They stood there motionless with a blank face. After a long time, they turned their necks with difficulty and shifted their gaze to Chu Mu's face. With difficulty they said, "Junior brother Chu." This and Chu Mu nodded his head, his face indifferent. Luo Yufeng and the other two were stunned for a long time before they finally reacted. For a moment, they couldn't tell what kind of excitement and emotion they felt. In short, their hearts were incomparably complicated. Their expressions were also very complicated. "Junior brother Chu, little junior brother, you truly hid yourself well." Zhou Jin sighed with a complicated expression. Jing Shuran's face was uneasy. Thinking back to before, he still had to fight with Chu Mu. Even Luo Yufeng couldn't remain calm. "We can't blame junior brother Chu. If such news were to spread out at that time, Qinlan sword sect would definitely be desperate." Li Yi opened his mouth and said, "But now, there are only a few of us here, and we're in the Sword Academy, so there's not so much taboo. Fourth senior brother is right. This time, I'm afraid that Song Guangtao didn't expect that he wanted to ruthlessly suppress junior brother Chu, but he shot himself in the foot." Yuan Wenhua laughed with a face full of expectation. Luo Yufeng and the other two's eyes suddenly lit up. They clapped their hands and laughed. "That's right. If Wei Hong was really killed by junior brother Chu, then Song Guangtao won't be junior brother Chu's opponent unless he reaches the half-step Qi transformation stage. In this way, he's really digging his own grave. I think that junior brother Chu was able to kill Wei Hong, who was at the peak of the 10th stage, when he was only at the peak of the 9th stage. Now that junior brother Chu is at the middle stage of the 10th stage, even if Song Guangtao reaches the half-step Qi transformation stage, junior brother Chu won't necessarily lose to him," Zhou Jin said in high spirits. "Well, about this news, no one should spread it out. Since Song Guangtao is digging his own grave, then after 3 days, junior brother Chu will give him a ruthless blow." Luo Yufeng lowered his voice as if he was worried that the walls might be eavesdropping. "Now, let's have a good discussion about how to cause more damage to Song Guangtao and the people of Qinlan Academy in the sword fight 3 days later." I like this." Soon, Yan Ming and Wang Kuei spread the news of the decisive battle between Chu Mu of Qingfeng School and Song Guangtao of Qinlan School in the afternoon 3 days later. Moreover, their respective cultivations were also announced. Lizhou Sword Academy was not big, but it was not small either, especially under the deliberate efforts of some people. Soon, the people of the 48 courtyards heard the news. In this regard, different people had different reactions. The disciples of the same low-grade sword sect were very interested. Although there would be decisive battles between disciples of different courtyards from time to time in the Sword Academy, it was rare to see a decisive battle with such a huge gap in cultivation. As for the disciples of the middle-grade sword sects, some had looks of disdain, some did not care, and some showed some interest. Among them, Chu Tian and Chu Hong from the Flowing Cloud sword sect and the 100 Flowers sword sect had almost the same expression. Their faces were filled with astonishment and surprise, and at the same time, they were somewhat worried. Without saying a word, they directly set off for the Qingfeng courtyard. In addition, there were several other people who had been involved with Chu Mu before. After hearing about it, they gloated. As for the 3 high-grade sword sects, they showed little interest. The strength of the high-grade sword sects was much stronger than that of the low-grade sword sections. The decisive battle between a swordsman at the peak of the 10th phase and a swordsman at the middle of the 10th phase did not arouse their interest. However, there was some movement in the courtyard of the prefectural air. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 135. After discussing how to cause more damage to the Qinlan Academy, a sign had been hung at the entrance of the Qingfeng Academy, rejecting all visitors. Therefore, Chu Tian and Chu Hong were rejected when they arrived at the entrance of the Qingfeng Academy. Chu Tian, do you think the person who is going to fight with Song Guangtao is Chu Mu? Chu Hong frowned slightly, looking at the tall figure in front of her with some worry. The Qingfeng Academy is the courtyard of the Qingfeng sword faction. Mu is a disciple of the Qingfeng sword faction, so although it is unbelievable, it is very likely to be him. Chu Tian smiled bitterly and said, still very surprised. Looking at the door with the sign, he said helplessly, "We can't force our way in, and no one will answer when we knock on the door. It seems that we can only wait 3 days. I am very puzzled. A few months ago, when Chu Mu returned to the Chu clan, he was only at the early stage of the 8th phase. At home, he broke through to the middle stage of the 8th phase. But now, this Chu Mu is at the middle stage of the 10th phase, which is 2 phases above him." Chu Hong's eyes were full of puzzlement. Logically speaking, the Qingfeng sword faction is only a low-grade sword faction, so they don't have that much power. Look at the two of us. Because of Chu Mu's guidance, our swordsmanship improved and our strength increased, so we could stand out and finally come to the academy to study, but now we are only at the early stage of the 10th phase. Although I am also very curious, it seems that we can only wait for 3 days. Chu Tian nodded and said. The two of them left together. In the blink of an eye, 3 days flew by. In the backyard of the Qingfeng Academy, a few figures leaped, an array of bright sword light shot out. The sword flickered and the sword flashed, and the sword chi was crisscrossing. The sharp sword cut through the air, making countless sizzling sounds. The sound of swords colliding with each other constantly rang out, shaking the air and shattering it. Chu Mu held his 2 swords with both hands. Around him, there were silhouettes constantly moving. The sword light swept over like changing clouds, like overbearing thunderbolts, like tearing golden blades, like a raging fire, like a strong wind blowing. Li Yuanwen, Wang Tingo, Zhou Jin, and Zheng Shuran were teaming up to fight against Chu Mu. They were using basic swordsmanship and basic moves of swordsmanship. They didn't use any killer moves. Luo Yufeng and Xie Chunlei, on the other hand, were watching from the side. They couldn't hide the shock on their faces. Ever since he found out that Wei Hong had died under Chu Mu's sword, after some discussion, Zheng Xiuran once again proposed to have a sword duel with Chu Mu. This time, he had the mentality of seeking advice. Naturally, he was easily defeated by Chu Mu. Chu Mu also proposed to let his senior brothers join forces and not use any killer move. He wanted to use this opportunity to perfect and improve the dual sword technique. From eldest senior brother Luo Yufeng to 7th senior brother Xie Chunlei, they joined forces and attacked Chu Mu together. Moreover, they changed their swords and attacked each other from all sides. However, they were all blocked by Chu Mu's 2 swords and counterattacked. In this kind of sword duel, the coordination of the 7 people became more and more powerful. Chu Mu's practical application of the dual sword technique also became more and more skilled. He was getting closer and closer to the small success level. It was as if he had touched a layer of membrane. As long as he gently poked it, he could see a whole new world. The 2 swords surged. Countless sword light and sword shadows swept through the world and forced everyone to retreat. Chu Mu sheathed his sword. His breathing was even and long, but his forehead was slightly sweaty. Everyone also sheathed their swords. Their breathing was slightly hurried. Compared with Chu Mu, who always had external sword chi to nourish and recuperate his body, their endurance was obviously different. 3 days have passed. It's time to go to the arena. Luo Yufeng smiled. There was a divine light on his face and his eyes were full of confidence. If it was before, he would have been a little worried. However, after seeing and experiencing it with his own eyes for the past 3 days, he was full of confidence that Chu Mu could defeat Song Guangtao. Let's go to the arena together. Let's see how the people of Qinglan Courtyard lift a stone only to drop it on their own feet. Zhou Jin shouted excitedly. The 8 brothers walked out of Qingfeng courtyard one after another and went to the arena. It was not so much the arena, but rather the arena. When Chu Mu and others arrived, they were shocked by everything they saw in front of them. Especially Chu Mu, he was very surprised. This was because the arena was built just like the gymnasiums on Earth. The arena in the middle was 30 meters long and 30 meters wide. The floor was huge, as if it was polished from a piece of dark green rock. It was incomparably smooth like the surface of a mirror. Around the sword battle arena, there were rows upon rows of stair-like spectator seats for people to stand or sit. The audience seats could accommodate as many as thousands of people, but there were only hundreds of people present. Perhaps it was according to the division of different sword sects, there were clusters here and there. What an amazing place! Li Yi and others came here for the first time. Looking at the sky-like roof, inlaid with a circle of round light beads, emitting a strong but not dazzling light, their eyes were full of shock. Their mouths were wide open, and they looked like country bumpkins entering a big city. Luo Yufeng and the other 2 looked at each other and smiled. When they came here for the first time, they also had the same expression. Even if they came here many times now, they still felt shocked. When their eyes fell on Chu Mu's face, they found that Chu Mu only had a flash of shock on his face, and then he recovered his calmness. They could not help but be surprised. "I'll go up first," Chu Mu said indifferently. He leapt into the air and transformed into a gust of wind that landed on the fighting sword stage. His left hand held a sword while another sword was strapped to his back. He stood perfectly straight and his eyes slowly closed. The entire world disappeared from his eyes. Then, all kinds of discussions came to his ears. He appeared. He is Chu Mu of Qingfeng courtyard. Sure enough, his cultivation is only at the middle 10th stage. His courage is really commendable. So it's him. Someone had seen Chu Mu before and recognized him. He's only at the middle 10th stage, but he dares to fight with a peak 10th stage. I don't know if he's a newborn calf who is not afraid of tigers or stupid. I think he's stupid. Does he think he can defeat someone at the peak of 10th stage with just a middle 10th stage cultivation? Just a disciple of a low-grade sword faction. His talent is usually not that good. The training he receives is definitely not as good as a middle-grade sword faction's disciple, not to mention a high-grade sword faction. How can he have the ability to challenge someone of a higher grade? Chu Mu, it's really Chu Mu, Chu Hong said with a worried face. It's really a Mu. Chu Mu frowned, his eyes fell on Chu Mu's face and pondered for a moment. But, according to the feeling a Mu gave me before, he's not a reckless person. He won't do things that he's not sure of. In the Chu family, Chu Mu defeated Wang Qi, who was at the early 9th stage with a cultivation of the 8th stage. It was indeed shocking, but that was under the condition that he did not use his killing sword skills. Chu Hong continued, still worried. Entering the 10th stage is obviously different from the 8th or 9th stage. I'm very worried. Let's wait and see. I believe in a Mu, Chu Tian said. That's all we can do now. Chu Hong nodded. It's a pity that Brother Chu he is cultivating in seclusion. Otherwise we could ask him to come out and stop it. We should be able to avoid it. Yes. Chu Tian nodded and did not say anything else. Wang Lin's gaze fell on Chu Mu's face, and he was stunned for a moment before he sneered. Chu Mu, I didn't think that the famous trash of Kaiyang City would be able to enter the Li State Sword Academy. It really is beyond my expectations. Third brother, he's called trash, but this trash really can't be underestimated. His cultivation has actually reached the middle 10th stage. The one who spoke was Wang Qi. When he thought of how easily he was defeated and humiliated by Chu Mu a few months ago, Wang Qi's heart bled and his face was incomparably gloomy. Although he was furious, Wang Qi also understood that Chu Mu's swordsmanship was indeed above his own. What Wang Qi could not accept was that Chu Mu's sword qi cultivation had surpassed his, reaching the middle 10th stage. Indeed, it made me very surprised, but a mere disciple of a low-grade sword sect, even if his cultivation reached the intermediate 10th level, so what? Wang Lin revealed a disdainful smile and raised his eyebrows. Second brother, you should know that the foundation of a low-grade sword sect can't compare to that of a middle-grade sword sect, let alone the high-grade sword sect that I'm in. The sword chi that they cultivate is generally of the middle-grade yellow level, while the ones that we cultivate are at least of the high-grade yellow level. There is a clear difference in the purity and density of the sword chi. There's also the swordsmanship. Although you were accidentally defeated a few months ago, it's different whether you've reached the 10th stage or not. I believe that you've already cultivated an even stronger swordsmanship in the sword sect. That's right. After I returned to the sword sect a few months ago, I worked hard to earn contribution points and exchange them for a complete high-grade sword technique. Now I've basically reached the small success stage, Wang Qi said confidently. The power of a high-grade sword technique far surpasses that of a middle-grade sword technique. Even if I've barely reached the small success stage, I can still defeat Chu Mu if I fight him again. Yes, second brother, I have a top-grade yellow-level sword chi technique here. I obtained it when I went out to train a few days ago. I can't use it myself. Take a look and see if you want to cultivate it. Wang Lin seemed to have thought of something and said, Okay. When Wang Qi heard this, a smile instantly appeared on his face. He had only cultivated a high-grade yellow-rank sword chi art. If he were to switch to a top-grade yellow-rank sword chi art, then the density and purity of his sword chi would increase by quite a bit. I'll let Song Guangtao teach this damned guy a lesson first. Then, I'll find a chance to teach him a lesson. In another place, a woman was coldly staring at Chu Mu. Thoughts kept popping up in her mind. Father wrote me a letter and told me to apologize to Chu Mu if I have the chance. Now, it seems that there's no need for that. He's just a piece of trash who thinks that he can reach the heavens with just a few fortuitous encounters. All kinds of discussions seemed to come from the sky and became more and more distant. The world became silent. Chu Mu gradually entered a strange state. Everything around him had nothing to do with him. It was as if he was the only person left in the world. Why isn't Song Guangtao here yet? Half an hour had passed. Yuanhua frowned and coldly said, This must be Song Guangtao's little scheme. He's coming late to delay and make our junior brother frustrated. Zhou Jin said in a low voice with a hint of disdain. Actually, when we walked into the arena, the battle had already begun. Luo Yufeng nodded and softly said, Our junior brother should also understand this point. Look at his expression. It's as calm as before, without the slightest bit of impatience. Song Guangtao's little scheme is destined to be ineffective. In the blink of an eye, another half an hour had passed. Over 100 people were gradually feeling impatient. It's already been 2 hours. What the hell is this Song Guangtao doing? I've fought with Song Guangtao before. This person likes to play tricks the most. However, to play this kind of scheme against a mid-10th phase disciple of a low-grade sword faction, Song Guangtao is still the same as before. He's not good enough. What the hell is this Song Guangtao doing? Why hasn't he appeared yet? Chu Hong frowned. I think his goal is to make a Mu impatient, Chu Hong said after thinking for a while. Soon after, a cold smile appeared on his face. He's just a low-grade sword faction disciple. If a Mu is injured in any way, I definitely won't let him off. Just as many people were feeling impatient, a burst of chaotic footsteps came from outside. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 136. Ha 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 ha. You're Chu Mu? I didn't expect you to still dare to show up. This is really out of my expectations. I deeply admire your courage. 12 people had appeared. The leader was a tall, human-like man with a long sword on his back. He had a strange smile on his face and his eyes flickered with a sharp glint. He stared at Chu Mu and his tone carried a bit of ridicule that resounded through the entire sword-fighting stage. Song Guangtao, I thought you were afraid to show up. Luo Yufeng sneered. Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's Luo Yufeng, the one who lost to my sword. What are you doing here instead of hiding in the Qingfeng courtyard and cultivating? Song Guangtao seemed to have just noticed Luo Yufeng and the others, and suddenly realized, oh, I know, that guy on the sword battle arena is from your Qingfeng Academy, so it's natural for you to come here. However, seeing how he was defeated with your own eyes, you must feel uncomfortable in your heart. We still don't know who will be defeated. Luo Yufeng smiled faintly. Even Zhou Jin and the others sneered. This caused Song Guangtao to be secretly surprised. According to his understanding, if he said this in the past, at least 2 or 3 people would jump up. But now, after being deliberately mocked by him, he was actually able to remain calm and composed. Moreover, he even had a cold smile on his face. It couldn't help but arouse his suspicion. I hope you can still smile when the time comes. Song Guangtao suppressed the bewilderment in his heart and laughed. With a flash of his body, he transformed into a stream of light and appeared on the sword-fighting stage, facing Chu Mu from 10 meters away. However, Chu Mu's eyes were still closed, as if he didn't notice the arrival of Song Guangtao and the others. Wei Geng's face was gloomy. His position as the 4th senior brother had just been taken away, so he shouldn't have come out in anger. However, he really wanted to see what would happen to that arrogant disciple of the Azure Edge sword sect, so he followed along. The other disciples of the Qinglan Academy sneered and stared at Chu Mu with disdain in their eyes. They whispered among themselves. Chu Mu's eyes slowly opened. They weren't sharp and oppressive, nor were they radiant. They were only clear and calm, like a deep pool without any ripples. In that instant, Song Guangtao suddenly felt his hair stand on end, but he didn't pay it any mind. It seems that Song Guangtao's little scheme didn't succeed. This low-grade sword faction's disciple seems to have a good mentality. Someone in the audience nodded and said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Indeed. He stood on the arena for more than 2 hours, yet he didn't show any signs of impatience or uneasiness. Furthermore, he still has such clear eyes. I'm starting to think highly of him. Putting on an act. Wang Qi coldly snorted in disdain. Many thanks for coming, senior brothers. Your junior brother's face is shining. Song Guangtao suddenly saluted with his sword and said with a smile on his face, this time, it's a decisive battle between me and Chu Mu, a disciple of the Qingfeng Academy. Please be a witness. This Song Guangtao is quite good at dealing with people. He's a little smart and self-righteous. Chu Mu, right? If it's just a sword fight like this, it doesn't make much sense to determine the winner and loser. Song Guangtao looked at Chu Mu again and faintly smiled. However, there was a sliver of a strange light circulating in his eyes. When Luo Yufeng and the others below heard this, they immediately knew that Song Guangtao was about to come up with some scheme. Let's make a bet. This is more interesting. Say it. Chu Mu looked indifferent and calmly looked at Song Guangtao. His clear eyes seemed to be able to see through Song Guangtao's thoughts, which made him feel very uncomfortable. His face involuntarily changed, and he squeezed out a smile. This bet has to be a little particular. We can't bet on something that's useless to us. Don't you think so? In my opinion, the most practical bet right now is nothing more than the qi increasing pills. Let's each take out 10 qi increasing pills as a token of appreciation. 10 qi increasing pills. Suddenly, many people's faces changed. What was a qi increasing pill? It was an elixir suitable for a 10th phase swordsman to take. It was used to increase the cultivation of sword qi. In the Sword Academy, every disciple of a low-grade sword faction could receive 1 qi increasing pill a year. A disciple of a middle-grade sword faction could receive one every 6 months. A disciple of a high-grade sword faction could receive one every 3 months. 10 chi increasing pills. Even some disciples of high-grade sword factions couldn't take out 10 at once, let alone disciples of low-grade sword factions. However, Luo Yufeng and the others had already expected all of this. They just didn't expect it to be so much. Suddenly their faces changed. 10 chi increasing pills. Chumu repeated and creased his eyebrows. They had already discussed this beforehand, but they only had 8 people in total. This time, they hadn't used the chi increasing pills they had just received, so there were only 8 of them. What? You don't dare? If you don't dare, admit defeat on the spot. Kneel down and kowtow 3 times. Shout that the disciples of Qingfeng Courtyard are all trash and I will allow you to leave here. Song Guangtao smiled. His eyes flashed and he revealed his true face. Yes, if you don't dare, kneel down and kowtow, then get out. The disciples of Qinglan Courtyard suddenly shouted. Damn it! Chu Tian clenched his fist and stood up. His face was full of anger. Chu Hong almost drew her sword on the spot. Wang Qilin, Luo Shui and the others sneered. Chu Mu, if the chi increasing pills are not enough, I still have 2 here. I can lend them to you first. Wang Qi suddenly stood up with a friendly smile on his face. However, Chu Mu just glanced at him and directly ignored him. Wang Qi's face became livid and he clenched his fists in anger. Second brother, don't be impatient. Wang Lin smiled and said. Wang Qi's anger slowly dissipated. He sat down again and stared at Chu Mu fiercely. I only have 8 chi increasing pills. As for the remaining 2, I'll use my 2 fake swords as collateral. Chu Mu said neither quickly nor slowly. 2 pseudo-swords and 2 chi increasing pills? Speaking of which, I still profited. It seems that you have already prepared. Song Guangtao was slightly surprised. He immediately sneered and raised his eyebrows. Since you are so straightforward, I won't let you lose too badly. Don't worry, just 10 chi increasing pills is too stingy. Chu Mu smiled faintly, which made Song Guangtao's face show a touch of astonishment. The others were stunned and even thought that there was something wrong with their ears. However, they heard Chu Mu continue to say, in our Qingfeng Academy, in addition to my 2 pseudo-swords, there are 9 other pseudo-swords. All of them will be used as wagers. If you win, they will all belong to you. If you lose, I believe that under the witness of so many people, you should not go back on your words. Good, you have courage. I like it. Good. After Chu Mu's words sounded, there was a moment of silence. Then, there was a loud roar. Big brother, promise him. The disciples of the Qinglan Academy under the arena were stimulated and shouted. They took all the pseudo-swords from their backs and raised them high. I can see that your junior brother is very confident in you. However, we only have 9 fake swords here. We don't have any more. Chu Mu faintly smiled as he spoke. Song Guangtao, however, hesitated. He was a bit scheming and clever, so Chu Mu's actions instead made him bewildered. By the way, I was lucky before. I had a little adventure and obtained 2 secret manuals. Chu Mu continued and took out 2 books from his arms. One is the upper yellow level fire attribute sword chi technique, and the other is the complete advanced gold attribute swordsmanship. They will also be used as wagers. Chu Mu's words suddenly made many people tremble. Even Wang Lin, a disciple of the upper rank sword faction, could not hide the shock on his face. Chu Tian and Chu Hong looked at each other. Luo Yufeng and the others of the Qingfeng Academy were stunned. Obviously, this was not within the scope of their discussion. Do you dare? If you don't dare, admit defeat on the spot. Kneel down and kowtow 3 times. Shout that the disciples of the Qinglan Academy are trash and I will agree to let you leave here. Chu Mu said slowly and clearly. Suddenly people were stunned. Wasn't this the original words of Song Guangtao before? Song Guangtao suddenly looked constipated. The disciples of the Qinglan Academy were choked and speechless. Okay, I'll do as you say. Song Guangtao's face was ugly. Now that he was riding a tiger, he had to agree. Immediately he thought, this guy must be bluffing. He wants to use this to make me retreat. When I defeat you, all those things will belong to me and the Qinglan Academy. Chu Tian, I can see that your brother is very confident. Why don't we also play? Wang Qi suddenly looked at Chu Tian and said loudly, since it's just a game, there's no need to be so big. I'll bet 2 Qi boosting pills. How can 2 Qi boosting pills be enough? Plus a pseudo-sword. Chu Tian sneered. Well, the Chu family's son is really bold. I'll do as you say and add a pseudo-sword. Wang Qi sneered again and again. But when the time comes, don't lose to the point that you don't even have a pseudo-sword. As a disciple of the Sword Academy, it's extremely shameful. Same to you. Chu Tian responded coldly. This extra bet suddenly pushed the decisive battle that had not yet begun to the peak, making everyone watching full of expectations. This disciple of the Qingfeng Academy is not high in cultivation, but his courage is not small. We can observe him. If he has a little ability, we can recruit him and bring him into the Crown Prince's banner. In the audience, a swordsman whispered with a smile. The Crown Prince doesn't want trash. Whether he has courage or big words, we have to see the result of the decisive battle. Another swordsman smiled coldly. Let's wait and see. The third swordsman smiled faintly and crossed his hands. This trash of the Chu family is really beyond my expectations. He has such courage. Lin Luoshui thought to herself as a strange light flickered in her eyes. Moreover, he actually has a high-grade yellow-level sword chi technique. What's even more surprising is that he actually has a complete high-level sword art. Yes, if his performance this time is not bad, I don't mind lowering myself and getting closer to him. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 137. More than 100 pairs of eyes stared at the two people in the arena, almost holding their breath. The entire arena was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. 10 swords. Song Guangtao raised his eyebrows, and a flash of light flashed in his eyes. He slowly drew his sword, and the obscure sound of metal rubbing against each other was ear-piercing. A bright sword light slowly bloomed, and a sharp breath gradually rose as the sword was drawn. It surrounded his body and became hot. Suddenly, Song Guangtao shot out like an arrow from the bow, and the fake sword in his hand was swung out. The wind whistled, and the air was torn apart. A faint arc shot toward Chu Mu first. Silent as a virgin, moving as a rabbit, there was no prelude to the attack. Decisive and ruthless, the sword aura surged and the sword light dazzled as it shot towards Chu Mu like lightning. Chu Mu raised his eyelids slightly, and the figure of Song Guangtao was reflected in his pupils. A touch of sharp sword light filled the air. His right hand held the hilt of the sword like lightning, but he did not draw the sword. He was motionless, waiting for Song Guangtao's sword to reach him. Is he scared? Many people were stunned. The sword of the elder brother is too fast. This disciple of Qingfeng Academy can't avoid it at all. Look at him, he's scared. The disciples of Qinglan Academy discussed. I think the elder brother is enough to defeat him with one sword. On the other hand, Luo Yufeng and the others looked indifferent and confident. I thought it would take 10 swords, but I didn't expect that one sword would be enough. Song Guangtao sneered. His sword qi surged, and the speed of his sword increased. He slashed out with incomparable sharpness. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. It was the smile of seeing victory in sight. Suddenly, Song Guangtao only saw a light blue sword light flash in front of his eyes, accompanied by a breeze. The sword light became fierce, and it quickly magnified in his eyes. The killing intent was locked, and it made his hair stand on end. Damn it! With a low shout, Song Guangtao's complexion changed greatly. He hastily changed his sword style. Shwa 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 sword light split up, and the sword's shadows became densely packed, covering the sky and covering the earth. They carried strands of electric arcs jumping around, making slight crackling sounds. They attempted to block Chu Mu's sword and enveloped Chu Mu's entire body. Chu Mu's eyes flashed with a strange light. Under Desheng's gaze, the trajectory of Song Guangtao's sword appeared clearly in his eyes. With a 10th phase middle stage cultivation and the ability of a sword art master, even if Wei Hong revived, Chu Mu would be able to easily kill him. Moreover, the sword art attainments Song Guangtao displayed didn't surpass Wei Hong's. With a flash of his body, Chu Mu retreated out of Song Guangtao's sword range as if he was weightless. Yet, Song Guangtao let out a sneer and chased after Chu Mu relentlessly. One sword thrust, one sword slash. Each sword seemed to want to take Chu Mu's life. It was incomparably sharp and threatening. The air was sliced apart, emitting an ear-piercing sound that caused one's scalp to go numb. The densely packed sword shadows carried traces of electric arcs as they leaped through the air, as if streaks of thin lightning were streaking across the sky. Their speed was inconceivably fast, shaking the surroundings, causing people to be dazzled. Good! Great swordsmanship, senior brother. Senior brother's thunderbolt swordsmanship has improved again. It will be easy to defeat the opponent. The disciples of Qinglong Courtyard applauded loudly and proudly glanced at the disciples of Qinfeng Courtyard, looking proud. Luo Yufeng and others were expressionless and ignored them. It was impossible to see their inner thoughts from their faces. This low-grade swordsmanship disciple's swordsmanship is just SOSO. One of the 3 swordsmen who belonged to the camp of the governor's son nodded and commented casually. That is the thunderbolt swordsmanship, a high-level swordsmanship. However, among the high-level swordsmanship, it is relatively ordinary. Look at this low-grade swordsmanship disciple's moves. He has barely cultivated to the level of Desheng. Such a person is not of much use to the crown prince. The second swordsman said. What makes me interested is that low-grade swordsmanship disciple in the middle of the 10th level. With such an obvious cultivation, he dares to propose such a big bet. It is really amazing. The third swordsman had a smile on his face. Looking at the situation now, although it seems that he is suppressed, but if you look carefully at his dodging, it seems to be messy. In fact, it contains some kind of order. It is not so easy to be defeated. Chu Mu counterattacked from time to time, and coincidentally interrupted Song Guangtao's increasingly fierce swordsmanship, so that Song Guangtao had to continue to use his sword to make the swordsmanship more coherent and connected, and strive to defeat Chu Mu within 10 swords. After a few swords, Song Guangtao suddenly frowned and suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why was it that every time his swordsmanship reached the limit and was about to erupt, it was always slightly blocked by the opponent's sword? Was it really a coincidence? Thinking of this, Song Guangtao's face changed slightly and forcibly shattered the idea in his heart. The sword chi surged and moved the whole body. A burst of roaring sound spread in the meridians, and the air around the body vibrated. The swordsmanship paused slightly and moved again, turning into a more fierce flashing arc, with a more dense posture enveloping Chu Mu. The strange light in Chu Mu's eyes became deep in an instant. With a wave of his sword, the sky full of sword shadows suddenly shattered and dissipated. How is this possible? Not only Song Guangtao, but many swordsmen on the stage also changed their expressions. Some even couldn't help but stand up, their faces full of shock. Luo Yufeng and the others all smiled. This was within their expectations. Chu Mu used his sword again, and Song Guangtao suddenly felt that he couldn't dodge this sword, as it had already sealed his entire body. Other than blocking, the only way was to retreat. With lightning flashing under his feet, Song Guangtao's speed suddenly increased, and he quickly retreated, increasing the distance between him and Chu Mu. He stared at Chu Mu with a gloomy expression, and for a moment, he didn't dare to use his sword again. Chu Tian and Chu Hong looked at each other and smiled. Their hearts were put down, and they breathed a sigh of relief. Based on the current situation, it seemed that Chu Mu wasn't at a disadvantage. Wang Lin frowned slightly, as if he was very surprised that Chu Mu could withstand so many swords without being defeated. Could it be that Song Guangtao was deliberately going easy on him? That didn't seem possible. As for Wang Qi, his face was gloomy. Watching the battle between Chu Mu and Song Guangtao, he thought of a few months ago, when he was in high spirits and was easily defeated by Chu Mu in the Chu family. The corner of his eyes couldn't help but twitch. Lin Luoshui's eyes widened slightly, and there was a strange light flowing in them. In his heart, he seemed to have some ideas. Chu Mu stood straight, and pointed the sword in his right hand at Song Guangtao. Waves of sharpness poured out, and at the same time, he said lightly, 10 swords have already passed. Song Guangtao's expression changed slightly, and he didn't answer. His eyes were full of vigilance, and light flashed. He stared fiercely at Chu Mu, and slowly moved his feet, looking for a chance to attack again. Everyone held their breaths again. They all had a feeling that the next attack would be earth-shattering, and it would also determine the winner. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 138. Swordsman, Sharp Edge. The strong and fierce aura was like an invisible sword shuttling back and forth in the arena, filling the air with a frightening sharpness that cut in all directions. When the fierce and sharp aura released by the two sides collided with each other, it was as if there were countless ripples that spread out in all directions. Everyone's eyes were focused on Chu Mu and Song Guangtao. They held their breath and waited for the earth-shattering outcome. As for Song Guangtao, he had stayed in the Sword Academy for a long time, so everyone was not interested in him. What really attracted their attention was Chu Mu, the new disciple of Qingfeng Academy in the middle of the 10th stage. He was an existence that could compete with a 10th stage peak swordsman. Come on, eldest brother. Eldest brother, we believe that you can defeat him, and let him know your strength. The disciples of Qinglan Academy waved their fist. They had no choice but to do so. Originally, they thought that Song Guangtao could easily defeat Chu Mu, but now it seemed that this was not the case. They could not help but feel shocked. Once they lost, they would lose not only 10 chi-boosting pills, but also 9 pseudo-swords, a superior yellow-level sword chi technique, and a high-level swordsmanship. Not to mention the problem of face. Just the aforementioned things were enough to make Qinglan Academy suffer a great loss and even go bankrupt. Therefore, Qinglan Academy could not afford to lose. Luo Yufeng and the others smiled. They had personally experienced Chu Mu's strength and knew very well that Song Guangtao was not Chu Mu's opponent at all. Song Guangtao's expression kept changing. In the end, all that was left was a cold and stern expression. His eyes flashed with a crazed lightning-like glow. His right hand slowly waved the fake sword. Faint purple electric arcs continued to dance on the sword's body, becoming increasingly dense. Faint purple electric arcs continuously surged around his body, emitting crackling sounds. For a time, Song Guangtao's power was biting cold and unparalleled. This sword is a high-level killing move of my Thunderflash sword art. It's extremely powerful. Song Guangtao stared at Chu Mu as purple arcs of lightning flashed in his eyes. A terrifying light pierced through the void as his tone turned tyrannical and threatening. I'll give you one last chance to admit defeat. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that you will be able to survive this attack. Looking at Song Guangtao, whose aura was getting stronger and stronger, Chu Mu raised his eyebrows and raised his eyelids. There was a flash of amazing sharpness. He smiled faintly and said, "Show me your sword. Let me see how the eldest brother of Qinglan Courtyard compares to Wei Hong." Upon hearing the name Wei Hong, the sharpness in Song Guangtao's eyes doubled in intensity. With a roar that sounded like muffled thunder, he brazenly struck out with his sword. Everyone felt as if there was a faint purple lightning bolt tearing through the void, heading straight for Chu Mu. Chu Mu could clearly feel that the terrible lightning bolt, with indescribable speed and unparalleled destructive power, was about to blast his body into pieces and turn him into charcoal. Song Guangtao's sword was like a lightning bolt that jumped into the void, faintly discernible. The terrible momentum was completely locked on Chu Mu. In an instant it had crossed more than 10 meters and appeared in front of Chu Mu. Chu Mu's pupils were completely filled with purple lightning. He's just a swordsman at the peak of the 10th phase. The power of this sword is really amazing. This time, Chu Mu will be seriously injured even if he doesn't die. Wang Qi's face flashed with a touch of joy as he laughed. Chu Tian frowned and Chu Hong clenched her fists. Her eyes were full of worry. This sword was too strong. Only Chu Mu's face was calm, but his eyes lit up slightly. He thought to himself, compared to Wei Hong's sure-kill sword, it's still a bit inferior. Without any prelude, the upper origin sword chi surged. Chu Mu suddenly struck out with his sword. His sword slashed out like an arc of light. A faint golden needle-like light instantly disappeared into the void. But the moment Chu Mu struck out with his sword, some of the 10th phase swordsmen in the audience all stood up, unable to remain calm. This was because in that instant they felt an extremely frightening sharpness seeping out. Chila, a light sound rang out. The violent and destructive faint purple lightning was unexpectedly split apart in an instant, charging towards Chu Mu's left and right sides. Song Guangtao only felt a flash of golden light in front of his eyes. Immediately after, his chest felt as if it had been heavily struck, and a bone-deep pain swept through his entire body. His entire body flew backward in an instant, flying more than 10 meters away. He landed heavily on the ground and rolled a few times. The fake sword fell to the side, and his limbs were spread out like a dead dog. What was more terrifying was that his clothes were torn, and there was a conspicuous wound on his chest. Fresh blood was gushing out, and the smell of blood filled the air. This, except for Luo Yufeng and the others, everyone else was dumbfounded. Their minds were blank, and they could not react at all. Eldest brother! Eldest brother! After a while, the disciples of the Qinglan Academy reacted. One by one, they rushed to the arena and appeared beside Song Guangtao. They hurriedly took out the big hemostatic pill and crushed it on the wound on Song Guangtao's chest to stop the bleeding. You damn thing! How dare you do such a thing? If anything happens to eldest senior brother, the Qinglan courtyard will never let you off. The second brother of the Qinglan Academy jumped up, his face full of anger. He pointed at Chu Mu and cursed. He looked like he could not wait to rush up and fight with Chu Mu. Let's go, take our eldest brother back for treatment immediately. The third brother, Yan Ming, immediately said and lifted Song Guangtao up. Wait! Chu Mu suddenly said in an indifferent tone, have you forgotten something? You're planning to leave now and never mention the bet, right? I'm telling you, no way. If you're willing to bet, you must accept your loss and hand over the bet immediately. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving. Zhou Jin stepped forward and stared at the disciples of the Qinglan Academy and sneered. Luo Yufeng and the others also sneered and lined up in a row to block the way. Damn it! Eldest senior brother is seriously injured and his life is in danger. How dare you disregard his life for the sake of temporary benefits? Get out of the way immediately. Otherwise, if anything happens to eldest senior brother, the Qinglan Academy will never let this matter rest. Second senior brother jumped out again and roared with a stern voice. Song Guangtao, don't pretend to be dead. This sword won't take your life. Chu Mu walked step by step, but the breath on his body was getting more and more fierce. His eyes narrowed slightly and his sharp eyes slowly swept across the faces of the crowd. It was extremely threatening. You're not going to let this go. Very well, compared to Song Guangtao, you're all chickens and dogs. I'd like to see how you're not going to let this go. The faces of the disciples of the Qinglan Academy changed dramatically. They were extremely vigilant and reached out to hold the hilt of their sword. I promise, when you pull out your sword, I'll kill you one by one. Chu Mu did not stop and continued to walk. The words he said contained a frightening chill and murderous intent. The Qinglan Academy's obviously unwilling to admit defeat had angered him. The swordsmen in the audience first showed a look of astonishment and then changed into different expressions. Some were disdainful, some sneered, and some looked indifferent. Chu Tian and Chu Hong stood up. It seemed that they intended to intervene. Chu Mu, don't go too far. The fourth brother, Wang Kuei, shouted angrily. Song Guangtao, if you continue to pretend to be dead, I don't mind letting you die. Chu Mu's tone became incomparably apathetic. It was like a cold wind from the extreme north, causing one's hair to stand on end and their bodies to tremble. A terrifying killing intent swept forth, causing even the swordsmen in the spectator seats to feel their bodies go cold. They were all horrified. How could a disciple of a low-grade sword faction in the middle of the 10th level have such a terrible murderous intent? Wait. We, the disciples of the Qinglan Academy, admit defeat. Song Guangtao finally spoke, but his voice was a bit weak. He was indeed pretending to be dead. He intended to leave here and return to the Qinglan Academy. As for the bet, as long as he told the outside world that he was seriously injured and so on, he could delay it. However, he did not expect Chu Mu to be so decisive. Song Guangtao felt the determination in his tone and had to answer. Very good. Chu Mu smiled and stopped in his tracks. However, 10 chi-boosting pills and 9 pseudoswords can be given to you on the spot. As for the upper yellow-level sword chi technique and the advanced swordsmanship, we don't have them with us. When we return to the Qinglan Academy, we'll take them to the Qingfeng Academy and give them to you. After Song Guangtao finished these words, he suddenly coughed and looked like he was about to die. In that case, you first hand over 10 chi-boosting pills and 9 pseudoswords. Chu Mu said as he sheathed his sword. Also, us senior brothers don't mind giving you a ride and taking what we should take. That's right, to be able to obtain a high-grade yellow-rank sword chi art and a high-grade sword art, such a good thing. Even if we had to do it 10 more times, we would still be very happy. Zhou Jin laughed loudly, almost causing Song Guangtao to vomit blood and die from anger. Good. Song Guangtao was a bit of a schemer and was very concerned about his reputation. In public, he could not succeed in his 2 hidden means. Otherwise, he would not be able to stay in the Lizhou Sword Academy anymore. Once the news reached the ears of the higher-ups of the academy, he would most likely be expelled. Even the Qingfeng sword sect would be humiliated. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, they had no choice but to swallow their anger. Chu Mu and Luo Yufeng looked at each other, then looked back at Chu Tian and Chu Hong. They nodded and turned to leave the arena together with the disciples of the Qinglan Academy. It was as if they were escorting the disciples of the Qinglan Academy. Let's go. Wang Lin stood up and said lightly. Wang Qi also got up and was about to leave. Second young Master Wang, are you going to be as shameless as Song Guangtao? Chu Tian suddenly sneered. I'll leave it with you first. Wang Qi turned and stared at Chu Tian with a gloomy face. He took out a porcelain bottle and threw it at Chu Tian. He continued to throw the pseudoswords in his hand at Chu Tian. He snorted and strode away. You still want to take back something that's already in my hands? Stop dreaming. Chu Tian added another stab. Wang Qi almost vomited blood, and his footsteps quickened. Let's go and find Ah Mu. This guy came to the academy without saying anything. I'll teach him a lesson. Chu Tian was in a good mood and laughed. The battle in the early stage was almost a farce in the later stage. It finally ended, leaving some people who had not left with a thoughtful expression. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 139. Qingfeng Academy's youngest disciple Chu Mu and Qinglan Academy's eldest disciple Song Guangtao had a decisive battle. 10th phase middle stage versus 10th phase peak stage. Ultimately, Chu Mu defeated Song Guangtao with one killing move. This news instantly spread throughout the entire academy. Except for those who were out or in seclusion, all the other people in the Sword Academy heard the news. Suddenly, one by one, their faces were full of astonishment. They had already known the news that the two were going to have a decisive battle, but the two were disciples of low-grade sword schools. One was at the middle of the 10th stage, and the other was at the peak of the 10th stage. The difference between them was too big. There was no need to watch the battle. Now it seemed that this was not the case. It was not impossible for a middle of the 10th stage to defeat a peak of the 10th stage, but under normal circumstances, it would never happen to a disciple of a low-grade sword school. If a disciple of a high-grade sword school defeated a disciple of a peak of the 10th stage, although it would be a little surprising, it was also reasonable. After all, to be able to become a disciple of a high-grade sword school, his talent was certainly not bad. In addition, the background of a high-grade sword school was at least 100 times more than that of a low-grade sword school. It was enough to turn the impossible into possible. It seems that this disciple of a low-grade sword school has some strength. Maybe he can make the Sword Academy a little bit lively. This disciple of a low-grade sword school should have some adventures. Otherwise, it is impossible to do this. I am very curious what kind of adventures, but he is only at the middle of the 10th stage. Even if he can defeat a peak of the 10th stage, he is only a disciple of a low-grade sword school. The same peak of the 10th stage, the middle-grade sword school is much more powerful than the low-grade sword school, let alone our high-grade sword school. On the other side, the three swordsmen of the 10th stage under the banner of the Crown Prince left the battle arena and walked to the Crown Prince's Sword Academy. They whispered, "This Chu Mu is indeed a talent. It is worth winning over. He defeated Song Guangtao with one sword. I can't see what kind of swordsmanship this Chu Mu used. I can only be sure that it is a high-level swordsmanship of the gold system. Maybe it is the one he took out as a bet. We are only responsible for observing if there is any value in roping him in. Since there is value, we only need to report it. We don't need to do anything after that. I'm just curious about this brat. When his cultivation reaches the peak of the 10th stage, will he be able to contend against a half-step chi transformation expert?" The three of them walked further and further away. At the same time, a beautiful figure leisurely walked towards Qingfeng Courtyard. This person was none other than Lin Luoshui. His eyes were filled with uncertainty as his mind raced. Ever since she saw Chu Mu, her inner thoughts had been changing and becoming very complicated. Especially after seeing that Chu Mu was actually able to defeat a peak 10th phase opponent, they were extremely shocked. It seems that father was right. The trash of the Chu clan is no longer in existence. As Lin Luoshui walked towards Qingfeng Courtyard, she thought to herself, even father didn't expect that the trash of the Chu clan would be able to enter the Lizhou Sword Academy to study. Furthermore, he was able to easily defeat a peak 10th phase opponent with a cultivation of the middle 10th stage. It seems that this trash, to be able to defeat a peak 10th phase opponent, he can no longer be called trash. He must have had a fortuitous encounter. Let me dig up all of his fortuitous encounters. When the time comes and he becomes mine, my strength will definitely increase significantly. When that time comes, Lin Luoshui's eyes suddenly emitted a shocking amount of hatred and murderous intent. I will definitely let you know the consequences of abandoning me after taking my body. I will make you wish you were dead. After panting heavily for a while, the ferocity on Lin Luoshui's face gradually dissipated. She regained her smile, and the shocking amount of hatred and murderous intent in her eyes gradually receded. Chu Mu, this trash, has always had feelings for me. Now all I have to do is take the initiative to find him, treat him a little better, lower my head, apologize, and slowly give him some benefit. Then, he will still give me his heart and liver. As long as I gain some benefits and increase my strength, I can kick him away. Moo, this time, thanks to you, your big brother, I got 2 chi-boosting pills and a fake sword. Chu Tian let out a loud laugh and patted Chu Mu's shoulder. With a cheerful appearance, he said, although I can't use this fake sword, I can bring it back to the clan in the future. Most importantly, these things were won from that arrogant Wang Qi. Chu Hong stood to the side. When facing Chu Mu, she subconsciously felt a little restrained. She didn't know what to say, so she could only smile slightly. These 2 chi increasing pills should be able to increase your sword chi cultivation a little. Chu Mu smiled. 2 chi increasing pills, one is Chu Hong's. Chu Tian smiled. He didn't wait for Chu Hong to say anything before continuing. Actually, I only have 1 chi boosting pill on me. If I lost, I would have to borrow one from Chu Hong. Now that I've won, I'll naturally give her one. Chu Hong didn't say a word and got a chi increasing pill. When she was about to refuse, Chu Tian spoke again. Mu, I think that Song Guangtao is not a good person. This time, we have suffered such a big loss. Even our flowing cloud courtyard will be hurt, let alone the Qinglan courtyard. So, you must be careful of his revenge. What Brother Chu says is correct. Little junior brother, Song Guangtao is a very scheming person. Now that he has been defeated by you in front of so many people, he will definitely hold a grudge and not let this matter rest. Luo Yufeng nodded and said, according to my understanding of him, he will hide in the Qinglan courtyard for a period of time. On the one hand, he will recuperate. On the other hand, he is afraid of being disgraced when he comes out. The most important thing is to plan again. Big brother, this Song Guangtao is a little clever, but this time, he used his cleverness on our little brother and has suffered a big setback. If he dares to plan any conspiracy, I believe that it will be more than just a setback. Zhou Jin smiled coldly and said, but his heart was very happy. We must not relax our vigilance. This failure is enough to make Song Guangtao pay attention to our little brother. Luo Yufeng said seriously. As long as you are strong enough, all conspiracies and tricks are fleeting, Zheng Xiuran said coldly. At this time, there was a sudden knock on the door. Xie Chunlei flashed and went out of the hall. After a while, when he returned, there was another person behind him. It was a young and beautiful woman. Luo Yufeng and the others showed a surprised look because they did not recognize this woman. Only Chu Mu, Chu Tian, and Chu Hong flashed a flash of surprise, especially Chu Tian and Chu Hong. After the surprise, their faces were a little gloomy. Second Miss Lin, what are you doing here? Chu Tian said coldly. Luo Shui greets Brother Chu and Sister Hong. Chu Mu, to be able to see you here, I am really happy. Lin Luoshui's face had a sweet smile, and her tone was a little excited, as if she had seen her lover for a long time. She looked very sincere, and it was impossible for people to feel bad about her. Luo Yufeng and the others looked at each other, and immediately showed a look that only men would understand. At the same time, they felt sorry for Luo Yuling. It turned out that their little brother was not interested in Luo Yuling, not because he was focused on the sword, but because his heart already belonged to someone. They stood up one by one, intending to leave first and leave some space for Chu Mu and the others. What's the matter? Chu Mu's tone was very cold. Although the two souls had been completely merged, there was still a trace of unwillingness in the soul, and it affected Chu Mu, causing some changes in Chu Mu's mood. Luo Yufeng and the others, who were just looking for an excuse to leave, were suddenly stunned. This tone seemed to be different from what they had guessed. Chu Mu's indifference made Lin Luoshui unconsciously frown. This seemed to be different from what she had imagined. Immediately, her brows relaxed. She felt that this should be a kind of resentment in Chu Mu's heart, a resentment based on the treatment he received at that time, and she only needed to use some means to settle it. Chu Mu, I know that I was wrong at that time, but at that time, I had my difficulties, and I couldn't help it, Lin Luoshui said, on the verge of tears. She looked like she had been wronged, and it seemed that she really had a great difficulty. Whether you have your difficulties or not, it has nothing to do with me. You are not welcome here, you can get lost. Chu Mu glanced at Lin Luoshui and said lightly. Lin Luoshui's face suddenly changed, a touch of anger flashed in her eyes, and she almost exploded. Fortunately, she remembered the purpose of coming here, and forcibly suppressed it, and squeezed out a bitter smile. Chu Mu, I know that my actions must have hurt you, but I was really forced, and all of this is Wang Lin's fault. Chu Mu did not look at Lin Luoshui, but looked at Luo Yufeng and asked slowly, Senior brother, you entered the courtyard of another sword sect without permission, and refused to leave, can you kill you? Yes. Luo Yufeng nodded. He could also see that this girl and Chu Mu knew each other, and there seemed to be some kind of relationship between them, but it seemed a little strange, as if Chu Mu was a person who abandoned her after having sex. You? Chu Mu. You are really so heartless. Fine, remember this, don't think that just because you defeated a 10th phase peak martial artist, you are so great, sooner or later, you will regret it, and at that time I will make you kneel in front of me and beg for mercy. Lin Luoshui's face changed, she could not bear it anymore, her voice became sharp, and her eyes were filled with anger, with a trace of madness. Get lost, or you will regret it. Chu Mu glanced at her, his eyes became sharp, and a trace of killing intent flowed in his eyes, which made Lin Luoshui suddenly shocked. She was only a 10th phase mid-stage martial artist, she could not be compared with Song Guangtao, let alone Chu Mu's opponent. She hurriedly flew out of the hall, and at the same time, shouted, Chu Mu, you wait. Luo Yufeng and the others were even more confused, but obviously, Chu Mu would not explain the reason behind it to them. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 140. Holding the low-grade spirit stone in his hand, wisps of pure spiritual qi flowed into his palm. Under the guidance of the upper origin sword qi, they moved along his meridians and quickly transformed into upper origin sword qi. At the same time, the upper origin sword qi was purified bit by bit. Within the Sword Academy, there were many pavilions in every courtyard. The disciples could choose the pavilions to live in according to their own preferences. Generally, only one person lived in each pavilion. Chu Mu sat cross-legged on the bed on the second floor of the pavilion, concentrating on cultivating the upper origin sword qi technique to strengthen his sword qi and improve his sword qi cultivation. Using a low-grade spirit stone to cultivate, he could clearly feel the improvement in his body every time he completed a full cycle of cultivation. The spiritual qi contained in the mid-grade spirit stone was too rich and too pure. After trying, Chu Mu found that he could not absorb the slightest bit of spiritual qi from it. He could only give up. Today was the 5th day since Chu Mu defeated Song Guangtao. Everything returned to silence. As for the spoils of war obtained from defeating Song Guangtao, Chu Mu received 3 of the 10 qi-boosting pills. The other 7 pills were distributed to the 7 senior brothers, 1 pill for each of them. For Chu Mu, with the help of the low-grade spirit stone, the speed of improvement might not be as fast as taking pills. However, in terms of the foundation and the purity of his sword qi, pills could not be compared to it. After weighing the pros and cons, Chu Mu decided to focus on absorbing the pure aura from the low-rank spirit stones. Only when he was about to break through a small stage would he use pills to help him break through. 3 qi-increasing pills were enough. As for the 9 fake swords, the 7 senior brothers all had their own fake sword. Chu Mu kept them first. He would give them out when he returned to the sword sect or his family in the future. As for the Purple Thunder Sword Qi technique and Thunderbolt swordsmanship, Chu Mu kept a copy for himself after the senior brothers copied them. Not long after, the 33 major circulations were completed. Chu Mu could feel that his own upper origin sword chi had improved a little. He exhaled a mouthful of foul air and opened his eyes. Cultivating in the Sword Academy and absorbing the spiritual chi from the low-grade spirit stone is indeed more efficient than cultivating in the sword sect. In the Sword Academy, not only is the spiritual chi but it also has a calming effect, allowing people to enter the state of cultivation faster and get rid of distractions. It was no wonder that the disciples of the Sword Academy wanted to enter the Sword Academy. Who was willing to enjoy such benefits? The others were also cultivating, but they mainly cultivated the flashing thunder sword art. Although the violet thunder sword chi art was not bad, the sword chi art they cultivated was also a yellow rank high-grade sword chi. Cousin, you must be the decision. Song Guangtao wailed. Losing to Chu Mu not only made him lose face, but also caused a great loss to the orchid garden. Now in the Qinglan courtyard, there were 8 junior brothers who did not have any pseudo-swords to use. It was really embarrassing. As for Song Guangtao himself, he had 2 pseudo-swords. Even if he lost, he could still use one. This time, if I can't get back my face, I'm afraid I won't be able to stay in the Qinglan courtyard. Humph, trash, you can't even deal with a middle stage 10th stage. Song Xinyang snorted coldly and looked at Song Guangtao's bitter face with slight disdain. He scolded, I told you to spend more time on cultivation, but you didn't listen. Instead, you like to play tricks. Now you know the consequences. Cousin, I understand. In the future, I will spend all my time on cultivation. However, that brat, although he is only at the middle stage of the 10th phase, his strength is extremely shocking. The current me is simply not his opponent. I can only ask cousin for help. Since we are cousins, please help me. Song Guangtao's face was filled with bitterness as he smiled apologetically and begged. Because he was the one who directly caused the heavy loss of the Qinglan courtyard, the disciples of the Qinglan courtyard now looked at Song Guangtao with disdain. They were not as respectful as they usually were. This made Song Guangtao feel that his dignity had fallen and he could not wait to get back at them. I didn't expect such a character to appear after I left the Sword Academy for a few days. Let's go and meet this disciple of the Qingfeng courtyard and see if he has 3 heads and 6 arms. Song Xinyang stood up, his eyes flashing with a strange light. Not long after, Song Xinyang and Song Guangtao came to the gate of the Qingfeng courtyard. Song Guangtao vigorously slammed the gate of the Qingfeng courtyard and shouted, Disciples of the Qingfeng courtyard, listen up! Brother Song Xinyang of the Fierce Gale Sword Sect is here. Come out and greet him. His voice spread into the Qingfeng courtyard and alarmed everyone. Suddenly, one by one, they flew out of the pavilion. The Fierce Gale Sword Sect is a middle-grade sword sect. They have no intersection with us. What are they doing here? Yuan Wenhua muttered. Song Xinyang. Luo Yufeng frowned and fell into deep thought. After a few breaths, he suddenly realized and his face changed slightly. This Song Xinyang is probably not here with good intentions. I remember that Song Guangtao seems to be related to Song Xinyang. So this Song Xinyang is here to stand up for Song Guangtao? Zhou Jin and the others' faces changed. A middle-grade sword sect was not comparable to a low-grade sword sect. The gate was made of excellent wood and could easily withstand the bombardment of hundreds of pounds of force. Song Guangtao did not use sword chi and could not destroy the gate with his bare hands. However, his hard slamming still made the gate shake and a loud noise at the same time. Luo Yufeng, open the gate immediately. Song Guangtao shouted again. Big brother. Zhou Jin and the others all looked at Luo Yufeng. Luo Yufeng was also very embarrassed for a moment. He knew that the other party was not here with good intentions. If he opened the gate, he would be asking for trouble. If he did not open the gate, it would be equal to offending a disciple of a middle-grade sword sect. Big brother, open the gate. Chu Mu appeared out of nowhere and said indifferently, "The trouble that should come will come, so he might as well face it." "Okay, open the gate." Luo Yufeng clenched his teeth and said. Zhou Jin flashed and appeared behind the gate and opened it. "Your Qingfeng courtyard is so arrogant. You actually made Brother Song Xinyang wait for so long. Are you not putting him in your eyes?" Song Guangtao coldly glanced at Zhou Jin and said in a sharp voice. His words were full of sarcasm. He was trying his best to provoke. "Brother Song, your presence brings light to my humble courtyard." Luo Yufeng smiled and cupped his hands in a sword salute. He said in a gentle tone, "Please come in." "No need. Who is Chu Mu? Tell him to come out. I have something to say to him." Song Xinyang's face was indifferent and his posture was arrogant. This was the usual attitude of a middle-grade sword sect disciple towards a low-grade sword sect disciple. Chu Mu took a step forward and stared at Song Xinyang. His expression did not change and his tone was indifferent. He did not try to curry favor with a middle-grade sword sect disciple. "You are Chu Mu? You do have some guts." Song Xinyang's face slightly changed. He frowned and said in a displeased tone, "I don't care about the grudges between you and Guang Tao. However, the value of the 10 chi-boosting pills and the 9 fake swords is extraordinary. I hope you can hand them over. As for the sword chi formula and the sword art, you can make a copy and return the original. Then, this matter will be settled." Luo Yufeng and the others' faces changed. Song Xinyang's tone sounded like he was giving alms, but it was also a bit tough. "Brother Song, the battle between Song Guangtao and our junior brother is public. Moreover, Song Guangtao was the one who proposed the bet. If you agree to bet, you have to accept the loss. Brother Song, what you are doing is unreasonable." Luo Yufeng argued. "I know. If you agree to bet, you have to accept the loss. But now, you have received the bet and have earned enough face. You should be satisfied." Song Xinyang said indifferently. The corner of his mouth slightly curled up with a trace of arrogance and disdain. "Or do you think that my face is not big enough? You would rather offend me than return those things?" "Brother Song." Luo Yufeng and the others' faces changed again. They were about to argue again. "Cut the crap. Didn't you hear what Brother Song said? Or do you think that you can compete with a middle-grade sword sect? You don't put Brother Song in your eyes?" Song Guangtao said maliciously, revealing his vile character. "You!" Luo Yufeng and the others were speechless. They glared at Song Guangtao, wishing that they could pull out their swords and cut him into pieces. "Brother Song of the Fierce Wind Sword Sect, right? If you want the 10 chi increasing pills and the 9 fake swords back, no problem," Chu Mu slowly said. Song Xinyang looked happy, thinking that this guy was quite tactful. Song Guangtao's face was full of smugness. He even looked at Chu Mu with disdain. Luo Yufeng and the others were stunned. Chu Mu did not pay attention to them and continued, "These are the things I obtained in the sword battle arena. If you want them, you can go to the sword battle arena with me as the bet. If you win, they will naturally belong to you." Luo Yufeng and the others were overjoyed. Song Xinyang was indeed worthy of being Chu Mu's junior brother. Song Xinyang was also at the peak of the 10th phase. Maybe he was stronger than Song Guangtao, but Luo Yufeng and the others believed that he was not Chu Mu's opponent. "You!" Song Xinyang's face suddenly changed. His eyes emitted a sharp light and looked directly at Chu Mu. "Low-grade sword sect's disciple, are you sure you know what you are talking about? You actually dare to provoke senior brother Song. Chu Mu, you are too self-righteous." Song Guangtao also shouted. "True chapter under the sword." Chu Mu indifferently replied. "You!" Song Xinyang's face became even uglier. "Chu Mu, you should know that hard things are easy to break. You should give some face to others in the future." Song Xinyang actually did not dare. Although he knew that he was stronger than Song Guangtao and could defeat Song Guangtao within 10 swords, but after hearing Song Guangtao's explanation, he did not have full confidence that he could defeat Chu Mu. If he could not defeat Chu Mu cleanly, it would not be good for his reputation. Therefore, the best way was to use his identity as a middle-grade sword sect's disciple to pressure Chu Mu and make him take the initiative to retreat and compromise. But helpless, Chu Mu remained unmoved. Chu Mu, I admit that you do have some skills, but it is not a wise choice to be enemies with a middle-grade sword sect. Song Xinyang said again. Oh, is that so? What ability do you have to represent a sword sect? Suddenly, a somewhat mocking voice came from outside, causing Song Xinyang's face to change greatly. He suddenly turned his head and his eyes emitted a terrifying light. Who are you? Song Xinyang's tone was low and somewhat angry. Chu Tian, Flowing Cloud Sword Sect's disciple. Chu Tian smiled and said, Flowing Cloud Sword Sect. Song Xinyang frowned. He intuitively felt that he was a bit rash this time. Luo Yufeng and the others revealed a happy expression. With Chu Tian's intervention, their Qingfeng courtyard should not be so passive. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 141. What does this matter have to do with your Flowing Cloud Sword sect? Song Xinyang frowned and said unhappily. It has nothing to do with my sect, but it has something to do with me. Chu Tian strode over to Song Guangtao and stared at him. Get out of my way. Although his cultivation was not as good as Chu Tian's, he had an incomparable aura of a general. Song Guangtao was suddenly shocked and subconsciously took a step back. So, you must intervene in this matter? This change caught Song Xinyang off guard and his face was gloomy. I am Chu Mu's brother, what do you think? Chu Tian walked into the Qingfeng courtyard and turned to look at Song Xinyang, a faint smile hanging on his face as he said. Song Xinyang was suddenly in a dilemma. Originally, he planned to use his identity as a disciple of a middle-grade sword sect to pressure the people of Qingfeng courtyard, who knew that Chu Mu would not listen to him. Now, a disciple of a middle-grade sword sect, the Flowing Cloud Sword Sect, appeared. Moreover, he was Chu Mu's brother. In this way, whether it was strength or background, it would be difficult to gain any advantage. Song Guangtao saw the hesitation on Song Xinyang's face and was suddenly shocked. He felt that today's matter would be left unsettled. He was very unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. Oh, it's quite lively. Suddenly, a voice sounded from not far away. Song Guangtao and Song Xinyang looked back and saw a group of people striding over. Looking at their clothes, they seemed to be from different sword sections. Junior Wang Qi. Song Xinyang flashed a hint of surprise. It turns out that Senior Song is also here. What a coincidence. The people who came were Wang Qi and the others. When they saw Song Xinyang, they were slightly stunned and immediately said with a fake smile, symbolically cupping their hands. Chu Tian and the others naturally heard the conversation between the two sides. Suddenly, their faces sank. They had a bad premonition that a storm was coming. At this time, Wang Qi and the others also walked to the door of Qingfeng courtyard. There were a total of 4 people. In addition to Wang Qi, there were 2 other acquaintances of Chu Mu. When he saw them, Chu Mu's heart unconsciously showed a trace of anger, but he suppressed it. Chu Mu was not surprised. As long as he did not give Wang Lin and Lin Luoshui a heavy blow, the trace of unwillingness in his soul would not truly dissipate. However, Chu Mu naturally had his own thoughts and opinions. He would not be controlled by the trace of unwillingness in his soul. When it was time for him to make a move, he would naturally make a move so that he could obtain greater benefit. In addition to Wang Qi, Wang Lin, and Lin Luoshui, there was another person whom Chu Mu had never seen before. However, Chu Mu sensed danger from him. This person had a faint smile on his face. His appearance was dignified and made people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. However, from time to time, A sharp light would flash through his eyes, letting people know that he was not someone to be trifled with. Lin Luoshui looked at Chu Mu hatefully. A few days ago, she took the initiative to find Chu Mu and even spoke in a humble manner. However, she was treated coldly by Chu Mu. She became angry out of humiliation. After thinking about it, she ran to find Wang Lin, the person she hated. Her goal was to deal with Chu Mu first. Wang Qi also looked at Chu Mu with hatred. Wang Lin had a faint smile on his face, but there was a trace of disapproval in his eyes. Senior Brother Song, let me introduce you. This is Senior Brother Guoqingji, a disciple of the Supreme Profound Sword sect. This is my third brother, also a disciple of the Supreme Profound Sword sect. This is junior sister Lin Luoshui, a disciple of the Supreme Profound Sword sect. Wang Qi retracted his gaze and looked at Song Xinyang. He had a fake smile on his face and his tone was a bit strange. Song Xinyang's heart skipped a beat. His expression changed greatly. Supreme Profound Sword sect, wasn't that one of the top 3 sword sects in the Li province, the high-grade sword sect? This Wang Qi was actually related to a disciple of the Supreme Profound Sword sect, and his third brother was also a disciple of the Supreme Profound Sword sect. Recalling that he had looked down on this Wang Qi in the past, and even had a small conflict with him, he immediately regretted it. He decided that in the future, he would treat this junior brother Wang well and support him. Song Xinyang greets Senior Brother Guo, Junior Brother Wang, and Junior Sister Lin. Song Xinyang quickly cupped his hands and bowed. His attitude was very sincere and sensible. Guoqingji smiled and nodded in return, but Wang Lin and Lin Luoshui directly ignored him. This made Song Xinyang's eyes flash with a trace of darkness. Senior Brother Song, don't tell me you can't even enter the Qingfeng courtyard? Wang Qi pretended to be surprised and said. That's not it. Song Xinyang squeezed out a smile and said. It seems that Senior Brother Song made a request but was rejected. Don't tell me this Qingfeng courtyard, a mere low-grade sword sect, dares to reject the request of our fierce-gale sword sect's Senior Brother Song? Wang Qi said again. His sarcastic tone made Song Xinyang's expression change, but he could only forcefully suppress the anger in his heart and forced a smile. Wang Qi only felt great joy in his heart. If it was any other time, he would have already been scolded by Song Xinyang. But now, once he entered the sword courtyard, he had the support of his third brother. Chu Mu, Senior Brother Guo, has personally come. Don't you know how to welcome him? Wang Qi looked at Chu Mu and changed the topic. Song Xinyang unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that he should find an excuse to leave here. This is Senior Brother Guo of the Upper Profound Sword sect, as well as the other senior brothers and junior brothers. It is our honor to have you here. Us senior brothers and junior brothers are proud of you, Luo Yufeng quickly said. The smile on his face was so sincere, and he gestured for his junior brothers to stand properly. Everyone, please come in. Even a middle-grade sword sect could not be provoked, let alone a high-grade sword sect that was many times stronger. It had to be said that Luo Yufeng, this senior brother, was really amazing. He knew when to yield and when to stand tall. There's no need to go in, Guoqingji said with a smile. He did not have the slightest bit of arrogance because he was a disciple of a high-grade sword sect. Instead, he made people have a good impression of him. Lin Luoshui's gaze fell on Guoqingji's face, and there was a trace of restrained contemplation in his eyes. Guoqingji continued with a smile. I heard that a new disciple came to your courtyard. His talent is outstanding, and he defeated someone at the peak of level 10 with only one sword strike. That is even more shocking. I, Guoqingji, have always liked to make friends with the sword. I was itching to come here. Although it is a bit abrupt, Guoqingji does not like to return empty-handed. The smile on Guoqingji's face was still gentle, but there was a trace of coldness in his eyes. With a glance, it was clear that he was not so simple. Another person came to find trouble. Although Wang Lin did not say anything, he revealed a cold smile. The expressions of Luo Yufeng, Chu Tian, and the others suddenly became very ugly. Guo Chengji's sword qi was at the peak of level 10, and it was not the ordinary peak of level 10. It was the kind of sword qi that was comparable to a half-step qi transformation cultivator. And because he was a disciple of a high-grade sword sect, his strength was difficult to predict. This kind of strength was many times stronger than that of a lowly person like Song Guangtao. Although they were confident in Chu Mu, they did not think that Chu Mu could defeat Guo Qingji. After all, the foundation of a high-grade sword sect was many times stronger than that of a low-grade sword sect. Chu Mu did not directly answer. Instead, he looked at Guo Qingji. Both of their eyes were emitting a cold light. Guo Qingji gave Chu Mu a sense of danger. Chu Mu's intuition told him that even if he could defeat Guo Qingji, he would have to pay a price. This was the difference in strength between a high-grade sword sect's peak level 10 and a low-grade sword sect's peak level 10. Is being a disciple of a high-grade sword sect that amazing? Does he think that he can do whatever he wants and bully whoever he wants? Chu Tian naturally did not want Chu Mu to face off against Guo Qingji. However, he also understood Chu Mu a little. Therefore, before Chu Mu could speak, Chu Tian hastily took a step forward and sternly shouted. The smile on Guo Qingji's face suddenly froze. A trace of coldness spread out from the bottom of his eyes. A threatening cold light shot out and fell on Chu Tian's face. Chu Tian's complexion greatly changed, and he unconsciously let out a groan. Chu Mu's body flashed and appeared in front of Chu Tian. He faced Guo Qingji from a distance, and their auras contended. Although his cultivation was far inferior to Guo Qingji's, in terms of true strength, Chu Mu was not inferior to Guo Qingji's. Moreover, this kind of confrontation of auras was nothing to Chu Mu, who had already reached the entry level of sword force. Everyone's complexion changed. They only felt that in the void between Guo Qingji and Chu Mu, there was a trace of invisible force colliding with each other, bursting out an astonishing aura fluctuation. They had no choice but to retreat. Song Xinyang's hands trembled. He secretly rejoiced that he did not agree to fight with Chu Mu on the sword battle arena. Otherwise, looking at this kind of aura, he most likely would not be able to win. He might even be defeated. At that time, he would lose all his face. A trace of jealousy flashed in Wang Qi's eyes. Wang Lin's face was dignified. Lin Luo's face was expressionless. Not bad. You can actually contend with me in terms of aura. You are more and more interesting to me. The smile on Guo Qingji's face disappeared and was replaced by a strange smile. It was as if he had seen his prey. Chu Mu could not help but have a trace of fighting spirit aroused. Battling with a powerful swordsman was also a way of cultivation. He had never avoided it. Wang Qi, what are you doing here? Suddenly, a somewhat cold voice came from outside. Everyone turned their heads and saw two people walking over. It was a man and a woman. The one who spoke was the woman, Chu Hong. When Guo Qingji's gaze fell on the face of the man who was slowly walking over, his complexion suddenly changed. A trace of fear condensed in his eyes and gradually deepened. What do I do here? Do I need your approval? Wang Qi coldly glanced at Chu Hong and said with a somewhat disdainful tone. Wang Lin keenly noticed the change in Guo Qingji's expression and could not help but look at the man who was walking over. Suddenly, he remembered something and his complexion changed. He hurriedly pulled Wang Qi and shook his head slightly, indicating that Wang Qi should not speak. See you later. Let's go. Guo Qingji glanced at Chu Mu, hurriedly turned around and said to Wang Lin. Immediately, he strode away without looking back. Wang Lin also hurriedly pulled Wang Qi's sleeve, but ignored Lin Luo and hurriedly turned around and strode away. Although he did not understand what was going on, Wang Qi was not a fool. He instinctively felt that something was wrong and hurriedly left. But before he left, he fiercely glared at Chu Mu. Lin Luo, Song Xinyang, and the others also knew that once Guo Qingji and the others left, They would not gain anything by staying here. They had to leave. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidyan. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 142. Luo Yufeng and the others were surprised that Guo Qingji and the others had suddenly left. Moreover, they didn't seem to be in a good mood. Chu Tian and Chu Mu stared at the figure that was slowly walking over. Their eyes narrowed and their pupils contracted. Especially Chu Mu, his face was solemn. He felt that although the figure was walking slowly, it had a unique aura. It was like a stormy sea that was about to engulf people. That feeling disappeared in an instant. It seemed like an illusion. Chu Mu frowned and pondered. He knew that it wasn't an illusion. Chu Tian, Chu Mu, look who's here. Chu Hong ran in with large strides. Her face was full of joy. Big brother. Chu Tian looked at that person and smiled as he called out. Chu Mu didn't say anything. I'm very happy to see you here. The person smiled and said, This is also the fortune of our Chu clan. Chu Hong's face was full of smiles, as if she was a child being praised. Chu Tian didn't have any objections, but Chu Mu still didn't express anything. However, he recognized that this person was Chu He, the nominal cousin of this body. He was the son of the head of the Chu clan, Chu Shinkong. He was the young master of the Chu clan. Towards this older cousin of his, Chu Mu's impression wasn't particularly deep because Chu He's cultivation talent was at the 6th rank. He was a true genius and received important nurturing. As for Chu Mu before, he was only very normal. Between the two of them, other than occasionally meeting, there simply wasn't any interaction. They only knew that the other person existed. Moreover, the current Chu Mu wasn't the previous Chu Mu. He didn't have the slightest sense of closeness to Chu He. Luo Yufeng and the others had an intuition that this person was not ordinary, but they still did not know who he was. However, after being in the Sword Academy for so long, Luo Yufeng more or less recognized the famous figures of the Sword Academy. After pondering for a few breaths of time, his expression suddenly changed and his eyes flashed with shock. Could it be him? If it was really him, then there was nothing strange about Guo Qingji retreating. Zhou Jin and Jing Xiu Ran obviously recognized the newcomer. Their eyes widened and their eyeballs bulged out. Their mouths were wide open and they couldn't say anything. Li Yi and the others looked at the expressions of Luo Yufeng and the other two. Their instincts told them that these people were not ordinary people, but they did not know their identities. Their minds were filled with question marks. It's not strange that Chu Tian and Chu Hong can come to the Sword Academy to cultivate. However, Chu Mu, you can enter the Sword Academy to cultivate. This is completely out of my expectations. Chu He was older than Chu Tian by a year, but in terms of aura and bearing, he far surpassed Chu Tian. This kind of feeling was like a comparison between an adult and a child. He revealed a gentle smile and his gaze fell on Chu Mu's face. He slowly said, To be able to cultivate to the middle of the 10th stage and surpass Chu Tian and Chu Hong, this is even more shocking. However, are you not going to greet your big brother? This was a family matter. Luo Yufeng and the others had no room to interfere. They could only obediently stand to the side and watch. I'm not familiar with you, Chu Mu said truthfully. It was very difficult for him to show intimacy with someone he was not familiar with, especially in this kind of situation where the atmosphere was somewhat delicate. Chu Tian and Chu Hong panicked when they heard this. Chu Mu was slightly startled. He did not expect Chu Mu to answer like this. Then, a flash of understanding appeared in his eyes. After all, although he and Chu Mu were cousins, they were two parallel lines in the past. There was no intersection at all. You're not wrong. If it were me, I would also feel unnatural. Chu He clasped his hands behind his back and nodded. He had a carefree expression as he slowly said, However, no matter what, I'm still your cousin. Since we're from the same family and we're related, I'll give you a piece of advice. Perhaps you've had some fortuitous encounters that have changed you and allowed you to possess your current strength. However, the Sword Academy and Sword Faction are different. The disciples of 3 high-rank sword factions, 8 mid-rank sword factions, and 36 low-rank sword factions are gathered here. Every single one of them has their own uniqueness and cannot be underestimated. Therefore, it's best to restrain yourself here. Don't be so self-righteous and dare to provoke anyone. I don't have that much free time. Chu Tian's expression changed slightly. He quickly looked at Chu Mu, worried that Chu Mu would say something to provoke him. After all, Chu He's words seemed to be well-intentioned, but upon careful thought, they contained the intention of teaching him a lesson. Moreover, they were somewhat high and mighty. Thank you for your advice. Chu Mu imperceptibly nodded his head and casually replied. He didn't take Chu He's words to heart because he had never expected or hoped for Chu He to be his backer. Even if Chu He had the cultivation of the Qi transformation realm and was stronger than himself. Alright. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. Chu Tian, Chu Hong, come find me if there's anything else. Chu He nodded and did not look at Chu Mu. Instead, he spoke to Chu Tian and Chu Hong before leaving with large strides. Chu Mu's attitude had truly displeased Chu He. As a result, he did not want to stay any longer. When he left, he even ignored Chu Mu and only spoke to Chu Tian and Chu Hong. He completely ignored everyone else. After Chu He left, Chu Tian looked at Chu Mu helplessly. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. As for Chu Hong, there was no need to say anything. She worshipped Chu He very much. Of course, she also worshipped Chu Mu somewhat now. As a result, she was stuck in the middle, unable to advance or retreat. On the other hand, Chu Mu's thoughts were completely different from theirs. Chu He's cultivation is at the Qi transformation realm, but normal Qi transformation realm cultivators would definitely not be able to give me that kind of turbulent feeling. Chu Mu frowned slightly and thought to himself, could it be that? Chu Tian saw Chu Mu frown and thought that he was worried about making Chu He unhappy, so he hurriedly said, Mu, don't worry. Find a time and come with me to find Big Brother. When the time comes, just apologize to him. However, Chu Mu was deep in thought. He did not hear what Chu Tian had said at all, so he just responded casually. Conception. Chu He might have also comprehended a conception. If he really did, then it should be the conception of water, Chu Mu secretly said. He was somewhat surprised, but immediately felt relieved. After all, comprehending a conception after entering the Qi transformation realm was not a very common thing, but it was not particularly rare either. Moreover, Chu He was also a genius. There was nothing strange about comprehending a conception. It seems that each of the 4 prodigies of the Sword Academy has very likely comprehended a conception. However, it is unknown how much they have comprehended, Chu Mu secretly concluded. I just don't know if they have comprehended sword force. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 143. I didn't expect that Chu He of the Stormy Wave Sword Sect, one of the 4 heroes of the Sword Academy, is actually our junior brother's eldest cousin. Luo Yufeng and the others shook their heads and sighed. This time, if it weren't for Chu He's arrival, I'm afraid it would be difficult to clean up the mess. Zheng Xiuran said. I really don't know how to describe this little junior brother. As soon as he came to the Sword Academy, he immediately caused chaos in the Sword Academy, Zhou Jin said with a wry smile, but there was a hint of excitement in his eyes as if he wanted to see the world in chaos. You can't say that about our junior brother. Everything can only be said that the people of Qinglan Courtyard are too self-righteous and can't afford to lose. Otherwise, these incidents would not have happened. Luo Yufeng said lightly with a bit of coldness. Well, junior brothers, Qingfeng Courtyard is the Qingfeng Courtyard that we all guard together. We can't rely on our junior brother alone, nor can we count on others. Only our own strength is the right way. Senior brother is right. I'm going to cultivate and strive to break through my cultivation and improve my swordsmanship, Yuan Wenhua said loudly. His figure flickered and turned into a pale golden rainbow and flew away. Senior brothers, let's work hard together, Xie Chunlei said, and also turned into a stream of light and left. In the blink of an eye, the front yard was empty. Everyone had returned to their own pavilions to cultivate. The various incidents that had occurred had created a great pressure, but it had also created a great motivation to suppress them, giving them more motivation and a greater goal to cultivate and move forward. Pure spiritual energy was transported in the meridians along with the origin sword chi, and his cultivation improved little by little. After 33 cycles, Chu Mu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and opened his eyes, which were as clear as water. The spiritual energy contained in the lower-grade spirit stone is really amazing. It has been used for my cultivation for so long, but it hasn't been absorbed by me. He looked down at the lower-grade spirit stone in his hand. It was the one he had been using since he got it. Then, he put the lower-grade spirit stone into the space bracelet. Raising one's cultivation isn't something that can be done overnight. Aside from cultivation, there's also swordsmanship. Now that I've gradually grasped the knack of the dual sword art, approaching the small success stage, and I've also made some progress in comprehending the aspect of wind. I believe that when I use the simplified version of the aspect of wind again, its power will definitely increase a bit. On the other hand, the gold-edged sword art has yet to be perfected, and the gold mentality is only at 10%. As for the cloud sword art, it has yet to be completely merged, and the cloud mentality is still at 10%. Well, in the following time, other than improving my sword aura, I'll arrange some time to comprehend the sword force. I'll focus on the cloud-type sword arts and try to reach perfection as soon as possible. Then, I'll extract their essence and merge them into the shocking cloud kill to increase its power. After saying that, Chu Mu immersed himself in the cloud sword principle. Flying cloud sword art. Soft cloud sword art. Rolling cloud sword art. Following cloud sword art. Cloud sea sword art. Breaking cloud sword art from low to high. There were a total of 6 cloud-type sword art. Among them, Chu Mu had already cultivated the flying cloud sword art, soft cloud sword art, rolling cloud sword art, and following cloud sword art to perfection. He had extracted their essence and merged it into the shocking cloud kill, which significantly increased the power of the shocking cloud kill. However, the shocking cloud kill was still an intermediate sword art. It could only be regarded as one of the more powerful intermediate sword arts. For Chu Mu, whose cultivation had reached the middle stage of stage 10, it was no longer enough. It would be more suitable for him to reach the advanced level. Especially in the Sword Academy, it could be said that more than half of the disciples had cultivated a complete set of advanced sword art. Naturally, they would also have advanced killing moves. The more powerful ones might even have 2 or 3 advanced killing moves. At present, Chu Mu's advanced killing move was the sky-ripping Golden Edge sword art from the Golden Edge sword art. In addition, he had the simplified version of the appearance of wind. However, the simplified version of the appearance of wind was extremely powerful, far surpassing the ordinary advanced killing move. Moreover, it consumed too much of his sword chi cultivation to perform one move. Therefore, Chu Mu could not wait to learn another advanced sword art. If he cultivated the Thunder Flash sword art, he would be able to obtain a advanced killing move. However, compared to using the time to cultivate the Thunder Flash sword art, it was better to use the time to combine the Cloud sword art. After all, it was a sword art that he had created himself. He could unleash the full power of the sword art and improve his cloud essence. Gradually, Chu Mu was immersed in the essence of the Cloud Sea sword art and the Cloud Breaking sword art. It was as if he was in a vast sea of clouds, floating up and down with it. Clouds had always been free to do as one wished, drifting and changing freely. Therefore, when one cultivated the cloud sword art, one would also be affected by it, causing slight changes to one's personality. When one said that observing a sword was like observing a person, practicing a sword art was like observing a person. Although there was no absolute connection between the two, there was more or less some involvement. A person with a domineering personality was destined to not have great achievements in the gentle and continuous sword art. A person with a righteous personality was destined to not have great achievements in the treacherous and strange sword art. However, Chu Mu was a sword art grandmaster. He could comprehend the characteristics and changes of various sword arts and combine them with himself, creating different styles according to different sword art. In the end, this was based on the foundation of a sword art grandmaster. It was impossible for ordinary swordsmen to achieve this. Immersed in the comprehension, the essence of the Cloud Sea sword art was grasped bit by bit. The Cloud Sea sword art and the Cloud Breaking sword art were both incomplete advanced sword art. However, Chu Mu did not have much time to cultivate them in the month he had been on the road. Therefore, until now, he had only cultivated to the level of Deshang. Based on his current progress, he estimated that it would take another 2 to 3 months to cultivate them to perfection. As for the time needed to integrate the Cloud Shocking Kill, it was impossible to estimate. People of the Qingfeng courtyard, why haven't you opened the door yet? A thunderous roar reverberated and suddenly woke Chu Mu up. Chu Mu's body shook and his eyes abruptly opened. A sharp killing intent shot out from his eyes and pierced through the void. Soon after, his killing intent was withdrawn. However, his eyes were still as sharp as before. With a leap, he transformed into an arrow and shot out. At the same time, numerous figures also shot out from the other pavilions. After a few leaps, they landed in the front yard. Who is this? I was thinking about the doubtful points of swordsmanship when I was suddenly disturbed. Zhou Jin muttered, somewhat dissatisfied. Not only was he dissatisfied, but the others were also dissatisfied. They were all working hard to cultivate. It was like being suddenly awakened from a beautiful dream. No one would feel happy. Open the door, Luo Yufeng said indifferently. Xie Chunlei was the first to rush out and appeared behind the door. He opened the door. There were 2 swordsmen in their 20s standing at the door. One was a man and the other was a woman. They looked impatient. The 2 were wearing silk robes, which looked extraordinary. Compared to the robes worn by Chu Mu and the others, the quality was much better. You people of the Qingfeng courtyard are really arrogant. You actually made us wait here for such a long time before opening the door. The female swordsman raised her eyebrows and her eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. Her tone was cold and sarcastic, which was unpleasant to hear. Who are you 2? What brings you to the Qingfeng courtyard? Luo Yufeng strode over and said indifferently. Although he had been in the Sword Academy for 2 years, he had spent most of his time cultivating in the Sword Academy. He only knew those who were more famous in the Sword Academy. The man and woman in front of him were obviously not famous. Listen, I am Zhou Ziming, an important member of the Crown Prince. This time, I am here on the orders of the Crown Prince. Who is Chu Mu? Quickly come out and see me. The male swordsman, Zhou Ziming, raised his head with an arrogant expression. His cold eyes swept across the faces of the crowd and his tone was somewhat commanding. The expressions of Luo Yufeng and the others changed slightly. They were here for their junior brother again. There was really no end to it. I am Chu Mu. If you have something to say, say it. Chu Mu did not move. He looked at the man and woman and said unhurriedly, You are Chu Mu? You look very ordinary and there is nothing special about you. The female swordsman sized up Chu Mu and said disapprovingly. However, the male swordsman said, The Crown Prince heard that you easily defeated an opponent at the peak of the 10th phase with your cultivation at the middle of the 10th phase. He was somewhat interested and felt that you were a talent worth nurturing, so he specially allowed you to join the Crown Prince Courtyard and become a member of the Crown Prince Courtyard. If you perform well, you will be valued by the Crown Prince. At that time, medicinal pills and secret manuals will not be a problem. Luo Yufeng and the others looked at each other and did not know what to say for a moment. The Crown Prince referred to the Crown Prince of the province, Zhou Hongyu, who was one of the 4 heroes of the Sword Academy. He was a powerful figure on par with Chu He of the Stormy Wave Sword School. He was not someone the Sword Chi Realm swordsman could compare to. Okay, you don't need to be excited, nor do you need to be deeply grateful. You only need to train hard in the future and do your best to serve the prince. Now, go pack up your things and immediately follow us. Zhou Ziming didn't give Chu Mu a chance to speak. He waved his hand and spoke arrogantly. Hurry up and pack up. This Qingfeng courtyard is really a courtyard of a low-grade sword school. It is really shabby. The female swordsman did not seem to want to stay here for a second longer. She urged Luo Yufeng and the others, causing their expressions to change. I am a disciple of the Qingfeng sword school. Chu Mu replied and glanced at the 2 of them. He turned around, used his movement technique, and transformed into a gust of wind to leave. His comprehension had been interrupted. It was already good enough that Chu Mu didn't pull out his sword to kill. How could one expect him to say a bunch of nice words to the other party? The male swordsman and the female swordsman were stunned and looked at Chu Mu leave in a daze. Please go back. My junior brother is a little naughty. Although he has some talent, he is not as good as the Crown Prince. For the Crown Prince, 1 more or 1 less means nothing. Luo Yufeng laughed and cupped his hands in front of his chest to smooth things over. Humph! What an imposing manner! Indeed, for the Crown Prince, 1 more or 1 less person like this doesn't make a difference. However, he actually dared to refuse the Crown Prince's good intentions. Humph, humph! Zhou Ziming's complexion was not good. His face sank and his eyes became cold. He slowly swept his gaze over everyone's faces and left behind a threatening sentence, "You're on your own. You really think highly of yourself." The female swordsman also said and turned around with Zhou Ziming, leaving in a hurry with a belly full of anger. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 144. Brother Ming, this Chu Mu is too arrogant. Zhou Qiantong angrily said, we must do something to teach him a lesson and let him know the consequences of rejecting us. Don't worry, after we go back, I will think about it. Zhou Ziming's face was also full of anger, but soon revealed a smirk and said, although they were using the prince's banner, but in reality, the prince rarely cared about this kind of thing, and always left it to his subordinates to deal with. Open the door, quickly open the door. Tell Chu Mu to come out, don't be a coward. Chu Mu, if you have the guts, come out and taste the power of my fake thunder sword. The constant shouting made one think that this was a market, but in reality, this was the entrance of the Qingfeng courtyard. There were more than 10 people gathered here, each with a sword on their back. They opened their mouths and shouted loudly. Their voices were like muffled thunder, constantly spreading into the Qingfeng courtyard. It was so loud that it made it impossible for people to cultivate in peace. Eldest brother, what do you think we should do? Zhou Jin and the others looked at each other helplessly. Since the second day after the 2 princes' subordinates failed to recruit, there were always people running to the gate of the Qingfeng courtyard shouting loudly, and the content was nothing more than wanting Chu Mu to come out and fight to determine who was better. In this regard, Chu Mu naturally was too lazy to pay attention to them, and directly used the sword qi to block the transmission of sound, directly ignoring it. Luo Yufeng and the other 7 people had to suffer, because they could not do what Chu Mu did, and could only open the gate to reason with these people. Helpless, these people did not make a move, nor did they retreat, and even had a look of, if you are not happy, then use your sword. They just blocked the gate of the Qingfeng courtyard, and took turns to shout a few words. After shouting for half a day, they left, and came back the next day as usual. Now, it had been going on for 3 days, and during this period Chu Tian came once, but among these more than 10 swordsmen, there was no lack of disciples from middle-rank sword schools, and they were not afraid of Chu Tian at all. Moreover, in terms of cultivation, all of them were at the late 10th level, and even the peak 10th level, which was much better than Chu Tian. It must be the work of those two fellows. Zhou Jin gritted his teeth and said. Everyone thought back to the man and woman who claimed to be under the Crown Prince's banner 3 days ago. When they left, they immediately nodded. Even if we are sure that they are behind this, there is nothing we can do. Li Yi shook his head. He already understood the position of the Qingfeng Academy in the Lizhou Sword Academy. They were at the bottom of the hierarchy, and were inferior to the others in every aspect. Solve the problem first, Xing Xiuran said. Go and report to the elders, Zhou Jin said. It's useless. The elders are all members of the royal family. Even if we're in the right, we'll end up with nothing. Luo Yufeng shook his head and said helplessly, moreover, the elders are usually in closed-door cultivation. Unless there is a major event, they will not pay attention to it. The headmaster and the deputy headmaster are even more elusive. We can only rely on ourselves to solve this problem. Suddenly, Chu Mu appeared at the entrance of the hall. He walked in and said, Leave this matter to me. What trick does junior brother have? Luo Yufeng and the others' eyes lit up as they hurriedly asked. Fight, Chu Mu said lightly, but his eyes were shining. Fight. Luo Yufeng and the others looked at each other. Wouldn't that be inviting trouble? Senior brother, let them enter the front yard. I have my own tricks. Chu Mu smiled faintly and did not explain. Okay, let's fight. Luo Yufeng was also open-minded. Rather than being entangled like this, it was better to open the door and fight. He believed that with his junior brother's strength, it would not be difficult for him to defeat these disciples, who were at most at the peak of the 10th stage of the middle-grade sword faction. Are you sure you want to fight with us? A late 10th stage swordsman almost thought he was hallucinating and asked again in disbelief. The others also stared at Chu Mu, their ears wide open as they stared at Chu Mu. What? Didn't you come here to fight with me? Chu Mu asked with a smile that was not a smile. Yes, yes. Our purpose is to fight with you. The late 10th stage swordsman quickly nodded. I agree to a sword fight. If you come one by one or all together, I can accept it. However, a sharp sword has no eyes. If I get hurt because of this, Chu Mu said slowly. If we get hurt, then it's because we are not as good as you. We can't blame you. One of the peak 10th stage swordsmen said coldly. In this sword fight, I won't use a killing move. I'll only use 2 incomplete cloud-type high-ranking sword technique. You can use whatever sword technique you want. Chu Mu added, causing the opponents to scratch their heads in confusion. I don't care what sword skill you want to use. I'll go first. One of the late 10th stage swordsmen jumped, pulled out his sword, and stabbed out in a straight line towards Chu Mu. It was extremely fast. The others all retreated, leaving an empty space for Chu Mu and the swordsman to fight. This person was a disciple of a mid-grade sword faction, so he naturally knew that Chu Mu had easily defeated a peak 10th stage swordsman. However, that was a disciple of a low-grade sword faction, and could not be compared to a mid-grade sword faction. In addition, he was not present at the time, and had only heard rumors. He instinctively thought that there was some exaggeration, and he was full of confidence in himself. Therefore, he bravely stepped out to be the first bird. As soon as he made his move, he could see that his sword skills were indeed extraordinary. He walked in a straight line, sharp and concise, and it was obvious that his basic skills were quite solid. Chu Mu smiled slightly, slowly pulled out his sword, and stabbed out. In an instant, everyone seemed to see wisps of clouds spread out, filling the air. Especially the person who stabbed out, he felt as if there were clouds in front of him, blocking his vision. After a few sword strikes, this late 10th stage swordsman suddenly lost his sense of direction. Everyone could only see that he was randomly stabbing out in the white fog, and could not find his target. Chu Mu's sword seemed to come out of nowhere, piercing through the fog and falling on the late 10th stage swordsman's neck. The cold touch immediately woke him up. "You lost next." Chu Mu withdrew his sword and said indifferently. The fog around them immediately dispersed. This made everyone look at each other, and they did not dare to act rashly. "If you don't want to use your sword, you can leave now. In the future, don't come shouting at the entrance of the courtyard." Chu Mu said. "I'll do it," a peak 10th stage swordsman from a mid-grade sword faction said. He took a big step forward, and at the same time pulled out his sword and slashed out. Like a gust of wind, the remaining fog was blown into pieces. This sword was fast and sharp, and it also had a trace of sharpness. As expected of a mid-grade sword faction's disciple, the moment he attacked, he was extraordinary. Chu Mu's eyes lit up slightly. This person's swordsmanship was better than Song Guangtao's, and he was more suitable as a whetstone. Yes, Chu Mu's calculation was very accurate. Weren't these people clamoring to have a sword duel with him? Since that was the case, Chu Mu could use the Cloud Sea swordsmanship and the cloud-breaking swordsmanship as he wished, and he did not have to worry about the damage he would cause to the surroundings. In this way, in a real battle like this, his mastery of the Cloud Sea swordsmanship and the cloud-breaking swordsmanship would deepen quickly, and he would be able to cultivate them to perfection faster. When he attacked, the sword stirred up the wind and clouds, and the clouds gathered and exploded. This was the basic move of the cloud-breaking swordsmanship. The next sword had the image of a vast sea of clouds, and it became the basic move of the Cloud Sea swordsmanship. At this time, Chu Mu was using the Cloud Sea swordsmanship and the cloud-breaking swordsmanship alternately to fight against the enemy. The clouds gathered like a sea, and Li Yi's eyes widened. His mouth opened so wide that it could fit a fist. Why? Because the Cloud Sea swordsmanship was his specialty. Now that he saw Chu Mu using it, he suddenly felt that he could not compare to him, and his face burned with shame. Chu Mu had only been practicing the Cloud Sea swordsmanship for a few months, and he had been practicing it for almost 2 years. In terms of mastery, he was not as good as Chu Mu. How could he endure this? The sea of clouds gathered quickly, and then suddenly, it stirred up and exploded into countless pieces, creating a powerful impact. It directly sent the 10th stage peak swordsman flying, and countless sword auras surged in all directions, exploding like the wind. I actually lost. The 10th stage peak swordsman's blood was boiling, and his chest felt tight. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood, but he forced himself to hold back the feeling of vomiting blood. His face was full of shock, and he muttered to himself in disbelief. "All of you, come at me together," Chu Mu said calmly. In the short battle just now, he had figured out the similarities between the Cloud Sea swordsmanship and the cloud-shattering swordsmanship, and he had also grasped the basic method of connecting them. Chu Mu had a feeling that once he could connect these two incomplete high-level swordsmanship as he wished, even if he did not cultivate them to perfection, he would be able to extract the essence of them. The remaining 10 or so swordsmen looked at each other, and then they all drew their swords and attacked Chu Mu one after another. In an instant, cold stars bloomed, and the sword light shone dazzlingly. Layers of sword shadows covered the surroundings, and sword auras crisscrossed. The air was sliced, and the sharp whistling sounds were incessant. The expressions of Luo Yufeng and the others changed, and their scalps went numb. Even though the 7 of them had attacked Chu Mu before, there were now more than 10 of them. Moreover, there were 3 10th stage peak swordsmen, and the rest were late stage 10th stage swordsmen. Compared to the 7 of them, they were many times stronger. Furthermore, these people were not like them, who focused on swordsmanship and supplemented by sword aura. When they attacked, they did not show any mercy, except for not using any killing move. When Chu Mu drew his sword, the surrounding white clouds quickly gathered and swept in all directions, directly engulfing this group of people. The Cloud Sea swordsmanship relied on a change. It blocked one's vision, making it impossible to see clearly. All that entered one's eyes was a vast expanse of white, making it difficult to find the enemy. It was very suitable for group battles. When Deshang's Cloud Sea swordsmanship was used by Chu Mu, who had comprehended 10% of the concept of clouds, the effect was even more obvious. A sea of clouds appeared before Luo Yufeng and the others, and even they could not see clearly what was happening. Fourth senior brother, you also cultivate the Cloud Sea swordsmanship. Do you know what's going on inside? Yuan Minghua asked in a low voice as he gently nudged Li Yi with his elbow. I can't see through it. Junior brother's attainments in the Cloud Sea swordsmanship are even more profound than mine, Li Yi said with a bitter smile. At this time, from the vast sea of clouds, there was a series of explosions, as if something had shattered. There were also some sounds of metal clashing and shouting. It was a chaotic mess. The sea of clouds surged, disappearing and immediately replenishing itself. It was maintained throughout, and the sounds of shattering rang out continuously. About a quarter of an hour later, the sound of something shattering could be heard. The entire small sea of clouds suddenly exploded, forming a strong storm that swept out in all directions. Luo Yufeng and the others closed their eyes and used their hands to block in front of them, using their sword qi to block the storm. When the violent storm passed, he opened his eyes and saw a dozen swordsmen lying on their backs in the distance, forming an irregular circle. As for Chu Mu, he stood in the center with his sword in hand. His entire body was surrounded by wisps of cloud aura, changing unpredictably. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation.